All right, guys, welcome back to Modern Day Debates. We got a pro-life versus pro-choice argument today. We're going to get them debating here in just a second. Just want to remind you guys, like the video and get your tickets to DebateCon. That's coming up, DebateCon 8, our flagship debate conference. And then we're going to get it started. Taylor, I believe you're going to go first and give your argument for why abortion is immoral. I think is kind of the topic we're centering it around. Um, General pro-choice versus pro-life arguments are, able to be had. It doesn't have to stay right on that. But yeah, you guys can get started with a 5 to 8 minute opening if you want. You don't have to use all your time, but yeah, get ready whenever you're ready. Go ahead.
Alrighty, thank you guys so much. Thanks, Mike, for moderating, and thanks, Eli, for being here. All right, so I just want to start by defining our terms. I'm representing the pro-life position. Abortion, I will define as the intentional killing of a preborn human life. So what this does not include is treatment for the natural death, as in a miscarriage or a delivery of a stillborn baby. My assertion tonight is that abortion is wrong, and I will offer the following line of reasoning for that statement. Intentionally killing innocent human beings is generally wrong. 2, abortion intentionally ends the life of an innocent human being. Therefore, abortion is always wrong. How do we know the unborn are human beings? At the moment of conception, a new being is created with unique human DNA. They have human parents, so we know they are of the human species. We know the unborn meet the standards of something that is biologically alive. I would say in general, as far as morality, a dangerous road to go down is to grant humanity or personhood based on a human plus something. So human plus race, gender, ability, size, location. We have unfortunately seen atrocities done to those who are labeled as less than human throughout civilization. I assert that humans are valuable based on what they are, not what they can do. Their size, level of dependence, environment, and stage of development should not inform whether or not their right to life exists. What we are doesn't change from the moment of conception to the moment of our death. We simply develop. Um, so I actually know that my opponent is going to talk mostly about consciousness. So what I will offer kind of at the front is what I think my opponent cares about are the qualities of the nebulous idea of some sort of consciousness. So memory, awareness, personality. I believe this introduces many issues, which we will get into further in the debate, but mainly that he will be excluding many humans from his definition of persons and including many non-human animals such as pigs or rats. He has the difficult task tonight of not only defining what consciousness is, when it starts, and why human consciousness is special over other species' conscious experience, he also has to prove that we are identical to our conscious, to our minds, that is what defines us, and that is where our morality ultimately comes down to. I'm actually just going to end my opening there. I think we'll get into a lot of the specifics in the debate, so I look forward to going forward.
All right. Appreciate that. And then Elijah, whenever you're ready.
Hey Taylor, it's good to talk to you again. I'm really excited to be on here on Modern Day Debate. I'm a big fan. I've been a little fan for a while, so I wrote a little bit of an opening statement. So forgive me as I read this. But okay,
All good.
most pro-life positions emphasize the importance of words like human, life, innocence, and killing without really grasping the underlying moral foundations of these words. It seems like people are uncomfortable killing human life, which is justifiable. As a heuristic, human life being intrinsically valuable is really useful. But we change the value of human life all the time in cases of brain death, self defense, war, and so on for justified reasons like maybe a lack of a specific quality. In these cases, we kill alive humans, but because they lack a certain quality, maybe innocence or consciousness, they no longer deserve the right to life. The pro choice argument is that abortion should be among these justified killings due to a lack of a capacity to deploy a conscious experience. You can get at this by asking who experiences the harms of an abortion, or why is it wrong to perform an abortion? Without any previous conscious experience or the ability to deploy a conscious experience, from the perspective of the fetus, it's nothingness and then continued nothingness. Somewhere in the middle, an abortion had happened. It can't be wrong to simply prevent consciousness from developing because we do that every single time we choose to not have sex. Science estimates that consciousness can be deployed when the thalamocortex connects the rest of the parts of the brain together to the brainstem, and this happens at around 20 to 24 weeks. So abortion before that is okay, abortion after that is immoral. If this makes you uncomfortable, that's because it's incredibly rare that we have an alive human that has never been conscious and isn't currently conscious. If you understand what this experience was like from the perspective of the fetus, pro choice would be the obvious answer. I hope that this debate, we explore this concept further without the intuition pumping that overrides the entire conversation. Pro life tactics often try to make you disagree with the statement and then look at the camera as if the statement on its own should make you uncomfortable or change your position. And I know that Taylor is good faith enough to allow us to actually question these intuitions and these feelings, and what exactly is making us feel uncomfortable about abortion. So I'm really excited to talk about these issues today and the questions that Taylor raised about consciousness, what that means, animal consciousness, human consciousness. I'm hoping that there's like a good faith understanding about these concepts and things that we're talking about, which I'm fairly certain Taylor can provide today. So I'm really excited to have this conversation and to get going with the debate.
All right, guys. Well, now that we got kind of some openings out of the way, we'll get into the 50-minute open dialogue. You guys can cross-examine each other. I just ask that you be respectful with each other's time. If it seems like you're cutting in too much, I will put the kibosh on that. So respect each other, respect me as the moderator, and we're going to have a good time. All right. So whoever spoke last, Elijah, Taylor, if you want to give a rebuttal or ask some questions, it's all up to you. I'm starting the timer as soon as you talk. And then after that, we're going to get into some Q&A. So you guys get some super chats and we're going to ask them, put their feet to the fire. If y'all have some hard questions, try to be respectful, not just pure insults. Thank you.
Sure. So I'll start. So I kind of just want to maybe address a few things that Elijah said in his opening. And then Elijah, maybe I'll kind of just like grill you for a little bit. And then if you want to grill me, it'll probably just be natural. So the one thing you said is that we change the value of human beings all the time. So you said something about, can you give me the examples you said? You said war, self-defense, things like that.
The three I would say is war, self-defense, and brain death. I would say those are pretty agreed upon.
Okay, so I would say that in two of those situations, a big differential that we can see in something like an abortion, which, do you agree on my definition of abortion, that is the intentional killing of a human being? Like, maybe for the audience, you could tell us where your line is at abortion, because I know you do draw a line.
Yeah, I draw a line at about 20 to 24 weeks when the thalamocortex connects the brain. I'm mostly interested in consciousness because that's when something can experience harms. That's when, like, there's a moral question to be had here, yeah.
Sure, we'll get to harm experience. But, so what would you define as an abortion post 24 weeks, just so we're not using a term? Like, would you agree with my definition of it's an intentional killing of an unborn human? For you, you can place that past 24 weeks, but do you accept that definition?
Yeah, I like the way that you described it. It is the killing of a life. I would say that it's immoral after, because then maybe we could use a word like innocent after 20 weeks, or we can use a different word. There's a conscious being, and it's wrong to kill like a conscious being.
I hear what you're saying about innocence. I think I'm just using innocence to delineate between like the death penalty and like saying like has not committed an offense or a crime. And maybe if you disagree with that, do you agree that there's an offense being committed as far as like maybe the bodily autonomy? Like, do you play into that? Like, is the fetus infringing on the woman's right at any point in pregnancy, would you say?
I mean,
like, why are you hesitant to use innocence, I guess?
Before 20 weeks or?
At all, I guess.
To me, it feels like innocence is a concept, and you can be kind of consistent with the word usage and say that, like, something that is unable to choose or something that is has absent guilt is something that also applies to maybe like a tree or concrete or something. So we want to get a little bit more specific. We'll say that, innocence is something that can apply to humans, but we're starting to lose a little bit of the concept of what innocent means when we're saying that it can apply to something that makes no decisions. Like, if innocence is the lack of, evil, then why can't evil be like the lack of innocence? Like, we get into some territory where it seems like we're no longer describing something meaningful.
Okay, I guess I just don't want to quibble over that, because I guess my only purpose of that is to say, like, delineate between that and like something like the death penalty. Like, I can only imagine that like it is okay to kill people, and the only purpose to kill people in something like that. But so I want to go through those three kind of things that you said. So I would say for two of those, self-defense and war, the big kind of difference between that and abortion is that the intention is not to kill, particularly like innocent humans. So I would say in the case of self-defense, like if you were to break into my home and I was trying to defend myself, and you died in the process, that was kind of like a secondary action. Like my main goal was to either get you out or protect myself. If you walked into my house and I just was like, I'm gonna kill you, like that would probably be the wrong thing to do. And in war, I would say similarly, there we understand the difference between just and unjust war. And even within a war, I would say that troops or any regime that goes in targeting specific civilians only, that would be wrong, morally wrong,
Yeah.
right? So do you see the difference?
The point of me bringing up the three examples isn't necessarily to say that abortion is the same. It's mostly
Yeah.
just to say that we do already have moral and legal justifications for killing human beings. And so what I'm saying is that the argument for abortion is trying to add this to the list of times when we can kill human beings because it lacks a certain quality. Not necessarily to say that they're the same. I wouldn't make like a self-defense claim about abortion that the fetus is infringing on self-defense. I'm not like an autonomy person, but I'm mostly just saying that there are times where we kill human beings and abortion should be one of those. And then I
Right, but
attack the word innocent.
I see, but aren't you even saying that like you agree that it's wrong past 24 weeks? Like why is that wrong? You're saying only for the only purpose of consciousness, like because I would say that you're saying that before 20 weeks or whatever your limit is, we're not even like what I guess the real question is like what are we doing before 20 weeks? Because you're trying to kind of compare it to, well, we change people's values, but that's not even what you're doing, right? You're saying that there's no person at all, right? Like that's I think that's
I'm
yeah.
saying that before 20 weeks there are no harms experienced in an abortion, so the action is something that somebody can take on if they want to. And so that's why, because the reason why I kind of preloaded the conversation with the examples of self-defense and war is to say that human life isn't just something that we value because it's human life. We change the value given certain characteristics or circumstances, like war. So the argument for abortion is because there's nobody experiencing the harms of an abortion before 20 weeks, it's the same as choosing not to have sex. It's nothingness and then continued nothingness. There's no harm that is experienced in an abortion before 20 weeks. The reason why it's
So
wrong after is because there are harms that are experienced after 20 weeks.
right, so I see. So obviously I'm going to disagree with everything you're saying, but
Yeah.
so number one, you said in your opening, and I'm going to just really grill into you for like however long, and then you can just like bring it back. I mean, I don't want you to feel like I'm just like leading it all the way.
Yeah, we're only 6 minutes in, so if you want to do that
My
till
defense is
10
way better than
minutes.
my offense, so grill
Okay,
into
all
me as
right.
much as you want.
Yeah, Mike, if you're like, okay, time to switch, you can go for it. But
Yeah,
I'll
I'll
try
give you
to.
to like 10 to 12 minutes, and
Okay,
we're at 6, so you can keep going.
sure. Okay, so you said I'm gonna push a couple like hypotheticals, though. Well, I'll save harm for later. But you kind of stated in your opening that an abortion before 20 weeks is the same as not having sex. Like it's not wrong to prevent consciousness, is what you're saying, right? Because it's the same as not having sex. Two questions. One, what is happening in an abortion before 20 weeks? Like you're telling me like morally nothing, but I guess what is happening? Like if you're going to compare it to just like not having sex, what happens when a woman goes into an abortion, let's say at 18 weeks? What is being removed from her body, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, it would be a human fetus. I'm trying to not maybe associate moral loading that is
I
happening
can
when you ask this
accept
kind
that
of
you're
question.
saying because you would say that it's a human organism, correct?
Yeah, what I
What
would say
you're
is,
saying,
yeah, I would
there's no
say it's the
personhood, right?
prevention of consciousness because when you
Okay.
ask that question, there's a lot of moral intuitions about maybe like a fetus being ripped apart and like taken out of the mother or poisoned and starved, and these are technically true accounts of what is happening, but when you think about it from the perspective of the fetus, it's nothingness and then continued nothingness. Even when I say perspective of the fetus, there's nothing that's happening there. It would be the same as if I pulled apart a dead body from the perspective of the fetus. So what's happening there is maybe from the onset more gruesome than what is happening from the perspective of the fetus, which is why I'm really focusing on that aspect.
I see. So I guess your answer to that would just be they're removing a human fetus that was never conscious, I guess, but an alive human. Like because what we would say is happening is that this thing is alive, right? So we have to kill it. I mean, I am trying not to use moral loading language, but it is the truth that we have to stop this thing
It's
from
also true when you
developing.
cut down a tree that you're killing an alive tree,
Sure.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you'd see it as that. Okay. So you said it's not wrong to prevent consciousness. So let me just throw out some like kind of hypotheticals. Is it? And we've talked about this before. We're gonna do it again.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Is it okay? Is it wrong to, let's say, a woman is pregnant? You know, if we could insert a drug into the baby's brain to prevent its consciousness but keep growing its body, let's say, is that moral for us to maybe create a world in which we can create child bodies to use for organ harvesting, sex dolls, you know, things like that? Is there, do you see any moral wrong with that?
Yeah, so I would say that all of the moral wrongs that exist are not because of the perspective of the body or the fetus. It would be, you would make the exact same argument for a dead body, in that, like, maybe humans value the dead body in a way that they would be uncomfortable with the way that you're using it. But to me, I would see it meaningfully the same as, like, the sex thing is, to me, like a very different example than the organ harvesting. But for the organ harvesting, I would say that it would be the same as growing a heart in a jar. But all of this is together, and I think this is kind of something that I said in my opening statement. It's very difficult to see an alive human and not personify an experience attached to that alive human. But if you're truly understanding what your hypothetical is saying is something that's never been conscious and isn't currently conscious, it would be the same as pulling apart a dead body and using the dead thing. But the fact that it's living, I think, throws people off. So if you have an uncomfortability with this, I think it's a
Right.
heuristic playing into it, but not.
I think the discomfort is that, you know, and then what I can offer too is, you know, why killing is wrong, right? Is in general, just outside of personhood or whatever, like why killing you is wrong. Obviously, from my worldview, I think humans have inherent worth. I think that we all have equal dignity. I think it explains a lot of the ways that we treat people, a lot of the laws that we build. I think it explains things like we don't just kill disabled and homeless people because, you know, they're stuck on resources. I think that we value humans no matter kind of their, you know, maybe their what they put into a society, right? But is there a grounding that you have for human worth in general? Because how can you even justify that, let's say, post 24 weeks abortions are wrong? What is your justification for that?
Like I said, it would be some sort of like minimizing of harms, and then harms can't be experienced if there is no experiencer. And so, in the examples that you brought up, there are experiencers. In like 99% of questions about whether or not it's okay to kill a human, there's an experiencer that needs to be justified. Abortion is like the very, very strange case where there isn't an experiencer. And so for me, it's more of a question of you have like the experiencing mother and you have the perceived benefits of the abortion and then the inexperiencing fetus. And since the inexperiencing fetus literally cannot perceive any harms, there's nothing wrong with an abortion before 20 weeks.
Well,
But after 20 weeks, it is potentially perceiving harms, so we should play it safe and not kill it.
potentially. Well, so the playing it safe, are you certain that consciousness begins at 20 weeks? Can you give that with certainty? Because are you just equating consciousness and the mind with the brain, a certain level of brain development? Because would you agree that consciousness is material or immaterial? Do you think that we can point to our brains where consciousness is?
We definitely can't do that, but in the same way that we're not worried about stepping on concrete and its conscious experience, we can, or like when I cut off my arm and I poke it and it's squirming, in the same way that we can make assumptions about consciousness, we can likely do this with the fetus. But what I can say too is any argument that you pose to me as to where we should find consciousness or where we can find consciousness, I'll move wherever you want to as long as you're earnestly trying to find consciousness. But I assume that at the foundation
Well,
of your defense is not going to involve consciousness. So asking
yeah,
me
well,
to
I don't.
define it is.
The problems I see, obviously, with the consciousness argument in general is like, can you name to me just a few traits about consciousness that you value? Because consciousness you're just using as consciousness. Like maybe we all understand it in a sense, but what does Elijah value about consciousness? Like, what is valuable about consciousness,
Well,
and
you've
why
stumbled
is it?
upon the hardest question in all of philosophy and,
Well,
and
I think it's
humanity.
very important for you to know that as someone that's using it as a a line for life and death. I think that you actually have the burden of proving why this is
I think
important.
it's interesting to talk about. This might come off as a little bit of a non answer, but I think that you have a perception of consciousness and what I'm referring to. And the way that I've described it makes sense in the way that you can perceive harms. But what I would say broadly is like an experience of the world, like a first person experience. Memory definitely has something to do with it, it's probably a component. Reactions to external stimuli is probably a part of it. None of these are sufficient for consciousness, but all of these maybe are evidence for consciousness. There's probably like a communication element. There's a lot of aspects to consciousness, but it's probably the ability to have a perspective is important.
So I would argue, number one, that a lot of animals share all of the things you just described.
I would challenge you on this for sure. Yeah.
I mean, challenge that they have everything you just said. They have experiences, they have memories, they perceive sensations. You think they do not?
I would say that we have a really hard time personifying the actions of animals and assuming that the motivations are the same as ours. What I will say that my broad defense for the difference between human and animal conscious is going to be that all of the parts of the brain are present at about 20 weeks, and the only things that change are maybe like building upon foundational experiences and the ability to communicate consciousness. So a baby's brain is meaningfully the same as an adult brain, but it's maybe grown in size or developed experiences and is able to use those experiences. And then the adult brain is able to communicate to us that it has consciousness. Animals are missing parts of those brains and are also never able to communicate that they have a level of consciousness. So we can likely assume that they don't.
I agree with you that the brain is there and it's developing, though I would just say that we have brain activity at like 6 weeks that we can see, and that I can use that same line of logic to say, well, the parts are there, and we know that if left alone, they will develop the parts that you seem to care about. So it just seems arbitrary to me.
Yeah, the brain waves are likely a signal, but not the same thing. Like I'm pretty sure that bacteria emit brain waves, that any like neuron is going to emit brain waves, and also like a floating amygdala while being a part of the brain doesn't actually experience. Like an amygdala isn't doing what we want it to. And so when all these parts are kind of floating around, they maybe are doing aspects of consciousness individually, but we can't really assume that they're doing that until they combine. But even beyond that, like if I did grant that if you were worried about consciousness, we could move the line down to 10 weeks if science was pretty confident about where consciousness is, but I don't think you would be comfortable with that because of the way that your foundation.
Right. Well, again, a few reasons I don't care about consciousness is because I think that we can see alive or like people, born people that are, have experiencing different levels of consciousness, even just temporarily when they're asleep, if they're in a coma, if they're suffering a brain injury. And so I don't think they stop being persons in that moment. I know you'll say that they have the parts and the capabilities that.
Sure. I will clarify that my line is from 0% consciousness to any percent consciousness. So levels of consciousness, if you can even consider it that, I don't care about at all. Any consciousness, any human consciousness is worth protecting under the assumption that human consciousness is a fundamentally different thing than animal consciousness. And then with unconsciousness, there's a previous consciousness that we would be relying on. So like in a coma, they would wake up, or sleeping, they'd wake up. But even if we didn't include that, they still have the capacity to deploy a conscious experience. They could wake up. And so there would be lots of differences between.
Seems like you guys are doing pretty good with going back and forth. So I didn't want to stop it right there and say, oh, now you got to switch. But we're at about 16, 17 minutes in. So, I mean, Elijah, if you want to be asking a little bit more leading questions, you're totally welcome to. Otherwise, I mean, you guys are doing good. I don't see a problem here.
Well, let's keep going with your thoughts, Taylor, and then my thoughts are more like, I guess, concluding. Like I know what you need to ask to get your point across, so we can get that out of the way, and then I'll ask my questions.
Sure. So I want to couple hypotheticals and then like a few lines of thinking that I think will take us down a few tangents, and then I'll just give the wheel to you. So just a few kind of hypotheticals in the line of consciousness. So if we're talking about coma as a sleep. So let me ask you this: if someone has a brain injury, like a severe brain injury, and let's say they lose all their brain, they only have their brain stem, so very minimal brains activity. They were, let's say they're your age, they had experiences. So they lose all their brain, they lose their memories, they lose their personality. And in order to cure them, we have this sort of method in which we can regrow their brain. So their brain will be growing. Eventually, they will have the level of consciousness that you care about, but it will take 9 months. Is it moral, or would it be morally just to kill them during that 9 month period, since their consciousness is gone, they don't have their memories, there's no way to know if they'll be the same person. Let's just say they won't be the same person. They'll be completely different people. They may even have the level of a newborn at the 9 months. So during that sort of 9 month period, are they a person?
Yeah, well, here's what I'll say. I use personhood as a proxy for harms, and so to me, the reason why abortion is such a specific question is because we're weighing the zero harms of an abortion to the perceived benefits to the mother. And so in this case that you're talking about, there isn't really a benefit of killing them. There might be like a financial benefit, or like we're
I
saving
think I could name
something.
some.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
and so like the threshold of because like I said, I'm a pretty like positive, I didn't say this actually, but I'm a pretty like people positive person, so when people are introduced into society, this is generally a good thing. And so like in the same way that if somebody chose to not have kids, I would deem that as like, I mean, you should probably have kids if you can, right? But with this kind of question, I would really poke at what exactly is happening. Like they are exactly zero, there's zero consciousness,
Yes.
and memory is an aspect of consciousness, but it's not the only part of consciousness. There might be
Their
underlying
brain,
facets of consciousness.
the
If they
structures,
restarted, it would be
right.
okay to kill them, as in like
Okay.
there's no consciousness and they aren't going to re-upload their past consciousness.
Right.
It would be okay to kill them if the justifications for such were high enough.
I see. Okay, so this might take us down a weird route. Can you prove, like,
Uh,
because you're talking about the mind and conscious, you don't have to right now, but just consider this. Could you prove, if I told you that consciousness did not re-upload when I go to sleep, or you and I go to sleep? Let's say that when I wake up, consciousness just disappears, and that maybe it takes, an hour to re-upload, or maybe I look like I have consciousness. Maybe I'm walking and talking like Taylor, but I'm not, like somehow, something. So the point being that consciousness is so nebulous, and I'm not sure you could even prove to me that consciousness is constant. Can you?
Yeah, okay. My response to this may seem a little unfair. I'm just going to point to the disanalogy of abortion to this hypothetical. While I do think
Mhm.
questioning consciousness is important, what I'm talking about again is 0% consciousness to any percent consciousness. What I will say is, again, this question is like interesting philosophically, but all of us have an internal like phenomenological state of waking up. And so asking to prove this like syllogistically is like notoriously difficult, and I think maybe unfair for you to request of me when I know that you have a position that you do wake up. And so if you're asking like, if you're pointing at this to say that consciousness is so strange that we can't grasp it at all, I would disagree with you on this, because we're having a conversation about consciousness right now. So
Sure,
obviously there's something we can
I
grasp. You can
I
point to
agree.
details about it, but I don't think this does anything for the abortion argument. At least in the way that I've described it so
I
far.
agree. It's just you're the one placing the highest value on consciousness. And while I think we value humans, I think we value human beings because they are of the rational kind, because they are of the kind that has the ability to have rational thought. But even when they aren't doing that, or cannot do that, such as like some major disability, we still value them. So you're drawing this, what I see as kind of an arbitrary line of, well, now they have the ability, but they're not even doing it at 24 weeks, not even as a newborn.
I would say
So
they
I guess
definitely are doing it, or at least
a level
it is
of
significantly possible that they are doing it, and it's a good
maybe,
assumption.
but not any more than definitely less than animals, I would say, as far as like a pig that
I
can play a
I
video
wouldn't
game,
agree with
or
this either.
I would, because I think that when we're naming the traits of consciousness that we can see that are valuable, I think that we see that non-human animals show a lot more of that than a newborn baby, like who is not aware of their surroundings in any meaningful sense, or aware of themselves in any meaningful sense.
Yeah, I would disagree with that, and I know you've met babies because you've had babies,
I have
but
met babies,
what I
yeah.
will say is that with the animal conversation, this also doesn't this is also like a point of contention because this only brings me more pro-choice or inconsistent. So like if
Or
I was a
vegan.
vegan, we
Right.
wouldn't be having this conversation. You wouldn't
Right.
have the
Right. Right.
ability to have this conversation. So this doesn't prove
I see.
pro-choice. This only like pokes interesting questions about consciousness. What I would
Hmm.
say too is that um we babies are certainly conscious because they are using previous foundation conscious experiences of learning to learn to develop. They have a sense of self. It's just their ability to communicate it or maybe remember it is not there. But there are lots of studies that we, and again, they have all the parts, so we should assume like it would be wildly reckless to assume that they don't have consciousness. Even if we can't personify it on them, it would be very reckless to assume that they don't have consciousness. Just also there, it seems to be that because like you were once a baby and whatever threshold from like 1 to 2 where you were learning 0 to 1 year old things, and then you know what I mean, like the 3 year old consciousness is a pyramid of past conscious experiences that provide evidence that they were conscious. They just struggled to communicate it to us, I think.
Yeah, I think I'm not convinced by the traits of consciousness that we value, because we do see it in other, animals, and we see huge levels. I understand your position very well, that it's either zero or none, but I guess zero or all.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't I'm not convinced by this, because I think we do develop sort of levels of consciousness even from 24 weeks. I mean, you're saying that the newborn can learn and kind of has these experiences. That's certainly not the 20-week-old in the womb, the 21, 22-week-old. They're
Well, there
certainly not having some level of conscious experience.
Well, it's justified that they wouldn't be able to communicate to us that they're having conscious experiences because they're in the womb, and I
Maybe they
imagine
could
that
be.
consciousness is a developmental thing, so they learn as things
Yes.
increase, and so um, they definitely like it's very very reasonable to assume that they are conscious.
Okay.
I
So go ahead.
I also feel like in this conversation you have an understanding of the concepts that I'm trying to elicit from you, or like I'm trying to illuminate. It feels like you have an understanding of these concepts. And so what is, I guess, like what is holding you back from believing in this position? Like what is wrong?
Sure.
Like how can you get me on board into agreeing that abortion is wrong if there's no experiencer that is
Well,
experiencing harms? How can you get
I
me on
don't.
board?
Right. So number one, I'm not convinced by this idea that to harm there has to be an experiencer. So I'm just not convinced by that, which was going to be my next kind of segue. Number one, because I think that we can harm things that are non-human. I think we can harm things that are inanimate. I think we have this concept, like this is a intuition we all hold, like we can harm animals that you would say are not your level of consciousness. We can harm the planet. Even if we all took a spaceship out into space, I would say we can, I don't know, shoot holes in the ozone layer or something, and harm the planet. We can watch the harm being done. So I think we do have a
Harming
concept. Go ahead.
what do you mean by harming the planet? That seems like so fundamentally a different thing than the concept that I'm trying to invoke.
But
And I
just
think it also requires an experiencer.
I don't. I think that we can look at all sorts of things and harm. I can harm a tree outside. I can, rip its roots out and watch it rot, and it will be harmed. It will suffer and
I
die. So
I
I think
really
we can
don't want to
understand
be
that.
semantic, but wouldn't destruct or like destruction or destroy or because when you say harm, what you're talking about is there is like a
Well,
teleological
what are you
purpose for
talking about with
something.
harm?
Yeah,
You're kind of begging the question to say, well, harm has to include an experience, or thus harm requires an experience. Like you're begging the question. So
certainly.
why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I can say is that with like examples of harming inanimate objects or the environment, there's a lot of things. Like one, what you're implying is that there's a purpose. Here's what I imagine you're implying is that there's a purpose, and we are detracting from that purpose, and then that is like harmful in and of itself. But the purpose requires an experiencer, and so like if a tree falls in the wood, like if nobody's there to experience it or to have put purpose onto the environment, when we mean harm the environment, we're not talking about an internal experience of the environment and it's like experiencing it. What we're saying is that it is harmful to us as humans who have placed the value on the environment. And so whether you agree with that as harm, it does, even if you say that these are different types of harm, we're certainly talking about different things than maybe what I'm trying to posit.
Okay, maybe. I just think that most people's intuitions point towards that we can harm things, that harm does not always require an experiencer. And let me offer you another
Maybe
sort of
I can use
hypothetical.
suffering instead of harm too, or
Sure,
whatever.
though suffering, would you agree? I think harm and suffering in general are going to just be subjective and ultimately boil down to preferences to say that I just don't like that. So I don't think
Well,
that's a good
I might
foundation.
I might even agree with you, but the beauty of the abortion argument is that what's happening before 20 weeks is objectively 0% suffering because they don't have the capacity to. Like we don't even need to weigh harms and benefits because on the harm side or the suffering side would be 0. So even if it is objective, like you couldn't communicate to me a level of suffering that's happening before 20 weeks, which would be like the premise or like the foundation of the pro choice argument.
So, just would you say that, if I was pregnant at 18 weeks and someone came and just kicked me in the stomach until that, whatever you want to call it in the womb ended, there's no harm being done besides to me and my experience?
Yeah,
You would say there's
I'm
no
gonna be
harm?
I'm gonna invoke the cringe word, but this is where choice comes in. In
Oh,
the
I
case of like me killing somebody else, that would be your body, their choice, right? You're ripping the future child from them unconsensually. But in the case of abortion, the reason why we're weighing harms and benefits is because the mother perceives a benefit
So the
of
human in the womb gains value when wanted, in that instance at
yeah,
least.
exactly. Well, I don't like again I'm trying to stay away from the word value because what I'm talking about is
Moral,
at 20 weeks we can have a moral conversation about an agent in the womb. Like there's a
but
now a
there's
third
no
party.
there's no
Yeah.
moral consideration in that. They're just want it is bad because it was wanted by the mother.
Yeah, they would be losing the work, the 18 months of work they had put into cultivating that child. They would maybe be losing like it would be harmful in their imagination what they when they imagine what that child would have been like, but it's
What
not
if
harm because of the experience of the child. But
what
if
if
it was, it'd be more because of
because of
left to its
want?
own devices, the mother could have allowed that child. Again, we're doing a lot of choice conversation now, and I have to earn that. But this is where they would be able to choose these things.
What if I was pregnant with 17 months and I was going to go get an abortion next week, but the father of the child really wanted the baby, and I was going to get the abortion anyway, and then someone came and killed the baby? Would it be morally wrong then because I didn't want the baby, but someone else wanted the baby?
Taylor, I just want to clarify. Did you say 17 months?
17 weeks, sorry.
Weeks. Okay. I was like,
17
wait,
months.
I'm about
Been
to
cooking for
lose.
a long time.
Good catch.
that
Good
was
catch.
that was a trick question,
Yeah,
Elijah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
Look,
no, no.
I just wanted to cut in and let you guys know that we're about 30 minutes in. We got another 20, 25, and then we'll get into the Q&A.
Sure.
But yeah, just giving you guys a heads up on that and wanted to clarify that we meant 17 weeks, chat.
Yeah, perfect, perfect.
All right.
What I would say in the example that you're talking about,
Mhm.
yeah, I've been thinking about this too. What I would say is that the intention of the person who did it, like some states consider it property loss, and so if we're talking like legally, but you're asking me like morally what would happen. The person
Yeah.
who did the intention had no understanding of the thought process of the mother, so it would still be wrong because their attempt was
Right.
to like
But
kill
there's
or
nothing
harm or
morally.
abort.
But killing nothing, killing what you've equated to what, like a tree, essentially.
Well,
So I'm not sure.
preventing it, they would be
Would
preventing a
it,
consciousness from existing. Yeah.
I think that's where we both agree that's a problem. So I think that is
Well,
where
you
my
prevent
argument.
consciousness from existing every time you choose not to have sex.
I disagree. I don't think that's analogous. I
I'm not saying
think,
it's the same, but you're preventing a consciousness from existing.
but left alone, that baby 100% will develop I mean, 99%, barring some great disability.
Hmm.
I mean, in your view, I think 100% because even you're saying if they lack, the ability to deploy the consciousness, they still have value. So 100% of the time, that baby will certainly develop. Every
Yeah,
time I
it will
don't have sex,
develop
there's
it.
a 0% chance.
It will develop it, but that's why I frame the question as who is harmed and what is wrong. Because the question we're asking isn't necessarily like what could potentially happen. These are interesting implications if you're making a choice, but there's no experience or there's nothing wrong in having an abortion before that. And so in the case of me causing somebody to cease to be pregnant, there is harm that is happening because the mother is perceiving it as such. But when a mother is consenting to it, there is no perception of harm happening because the fetus isn't there and the mother wants it to happen. So the mother can be
Have you
incorrect about this, but that's the goal.
Have you defined harm? Have we done that? Can we define your definition of harm? Because I think your foundation, that is its bedrock, right? Like we're all about preventing harm, right?
I can try my best, but again, I'm going to attack the framing of this and that you have an intuition of what I'm speaking of. I can maybe say suffering, like an internal perspective of things that are outside of your preference, perhaps. We get into some weird territory with like, because when you kill somebody, they never actually experience the death exactly. They just experience the juxtaposition of life and then like death, but they don't actually experience the loss of life. They may experience the act of being killed, but it feels like intuitively we have a notion of that being harmful as well still. So it'd be something like that, like a perspective of suffering, or that is against their wishes.
Oh, but ultimately subjective though, right? Because my perspective of suffering is going to be much different than even your suffering perspective, right?
Yeah, but I would say that suffering exists. Whether or not it's difficult to describe is beyond the point. And like I said, the beauty of the abortion conversation is that the suffering that's happening is zero.
Well, suffering is subjective, yes, but also not always bad. Would you agree that there's good forms of suffering? Lifting weights, sacrifice.
I mean, kind of definitionally, no, but you can suffer for a greater good. So like the suffering is reliant on your perspective, which is what illuminates the situations that you're bringing up about somebody being killed who's pregnant. We're illuminating the fact that suffering is kind of up to perspective.
Right. I just think I'm just pointing out that it's a bit of a shaky moral ground to have a foundation that is ultimately subjective. So I'm not sure you're even in a position to say that abortion even past 24 weeks is wrong. I just think it is not your preference that it happens.
It's not the preference of the experiencer in the womb. It wouldn't be up to me.
How do you know that?
How do I know that it wouldn't be up to the perspective?
How can you know that?
Well, because
how could you know that the experiencer in the womb prefers that or not?
Oh, they have the autonomy, I guess, to choose, so we shouldn't make a decision for them until they're capable of. This is the same defense for why we don't kill our like 1-year-olds, even though like they've never expressed a. We just assume that they have that preference, but they have to be experiencing to have a preference. So
is it moral to kill people who have suicidal ideation?
Is it immoral to kill people who have suicidal?
Sure.
It would be wrong in the same way that I had described the making somebody not pregnant. It would be wrong because the intention of the person who killed them was not with a proper understanding. But even then, like,
but you're assuming a lot of intentions throughout your whole every moral. You're just assuming their intention. You're saying, well, like, how can you possibly understand the intention of the killer or the person who has been killed?
The framing of this again, I'll remind is kind of frustrating because I'm offering a system at which we can ask questions and we can gauge and we can weigh. We can make assumptions about preferences. We can directly express preferences and then we can weigh them against each other. But your system is just, we have the concept human. We should protect that, which isn't even true because we have situations in which humans are not protected justifiably. Generally. And so this is not a general case would be the argument. And it seems as if you understand why it's not a general case, but you're still relying on the intuition that humans are valuable, even though that intuition only exists because of heuristic where we attach humanhood to consciousness the whole time.
You're also doing that. You're also doing that with consciousness because you're saying human consciousness is more valuable than, let's say, animal consciousness. You haven't given me a meaningful difference except attaching that word human. So I think you're also doing that.
Well, no, I'm saying the human brain would be the difference, that there are meaningful distinctions between a human brain and an animal brain. And then there's also meaningful distinctions between how animals express consciousness and how humans express consciousness.
And there's also a meaningful difference between a 24-week fetus's brain and a 24-year-old adult's brain.
Not in the parts. The sizes vary and they build on experiences, but the parts are all there. So those with
an extreme brain injury, do they not deserve anencephaly or you essentially born without a brain or just a brain stem? Are they not people?
I would always err on the side of caution because they have the parts. We just assume they're not working right. So I always err on the side of caution.
People that are born like without a brain, like truly just a brain stem. Like there are people that are missing their like frontal lobe. They're like huge chunks of brain. Like they're literally missing their brain.
Well, you're asking me a practical question about specific cases when I'm talking about maybe a conceptual consciousness. So the answer is going to seem like foggy, but the answer is dependent on what level of consciousness I predict that they have. And so if they have zero consciousness, then my argument stays the same. If they have some human consciousness, then my argument is that we shouldn't kill them. But if the area is murky, which isn't the case at conception, we know that at conception they are not conscious. We know at 5 weeks they're not conscious. We know at 10 weeks they're not conscious. After that, like whatever, if we want to be safe, we can play some games around there. But with the anencephaly case, it's like we can just keep them alive. There's no harm in predicting that they aren't conscious.
Okay, so I do want to go down one more line and then just a quick line, because is it safe to assume, or would you agree with the statement of like, we are our minds, we are our consciousness, if that is what you value? Like, because my position is that we are human organisms, we are our body and our minds and our brains. I'll say brains. These two things cannot be separated. Like that is who we are. So, we understand death happens when the parts stop working for the good of the whole, right? So that's why we understand like brain death, or if a heart stops working, things like that. So is it fair to say that, like, how would you deal, because you've offered this to me in prior conversations, if we put a brain in a robot, is that Taylor, or is the body on the ground Taylor, right? So your answer to that would be, if I put Elijah's brain in a robot, who's Elijah?
Yeah, it'd be certainly the brain. What I will say is that brain death, the all the parts are working towards the whole, is not true in like 99% of humans if they get something replaced. The reason why we consider brain death is because that's the only part that doesn't have to work for the whole for us to consider them dead. That's the only part. If the heart isn't working for the whole, we can replace the heart and all of these things. So
the brain is very important. I agree,
it's the most important.
But only because we have the technology. Would you say in the future, if we have technology to have, like, say, brain replacements, that, a heart-lung machine, we say that we would put them on a heart-lung machine because we can do that. We don't have the technology right now to replace a brain, right? Like, and if we did in the future, maybe that would be a possibility.
Yeah.
To preserve the good of the whole.
Yeah, but I guess the point of that was, again, to use brain death as an example of death being the parts not working for the whole, I think it kind of actually plays into my point that the only part that we consider that to be the case for is the brain. And that's why I would say that our best guess is that ourselves is related to the brain.
No, and I'll show you why. If a heart stops and we don't have a heart-lung machine, that person's going to die. The blood will stop pumping, the blood will, so that person will die. If the lungs stop working, they will die because they don't have oxygen, right? So
the death only occurs when the brain stops, though. We can replace the brain. We would never consider somebody dead if just their heart wasn't beating, but their brain was still functioning. The brain is like the last semblance of hope.
Only because we have the technology. Because if the heart stopped beating and we didn't have the technology to revive them or to replace their heart.
But that's not really getting us any closer to the question of personhood or humanhood.
I agree.
All of this to me is illustrating my point. But I don't know if I've communicated that well enough. But all of this seems to illustrate my point, I think.
I agree, though. My what I wanted to go down was, so you agree that, and when I say brain, I'm more talking about a mind, right? Because I think that's what you were valuing: consciousness, mind, something more immaterial. Because right, okay. So I just want to throw the kind of robot analogy back at you. So let me ask you this: if I could copy and paste your consciousness, like whatever your memories, everything that you care about, into a robot. While keeping you.
What does that mean?
Alive? So you're alive, you're fine. I can somehow go into your mind and copy it. This is a hypothetical.
So there are two of my identical minds?
Yes. Are there two of you?
Yes. Now, what I would say is the second one of the Elijahs, which would be the millisecond that the consciousness comes online, experiences something different. There would now be two different things. But at that moment, there would be two Elijahs, yeah.
Okay, and so in the case of, like, multiple personalities or something, like if you had, 20 different personalities in your head and they were like this and you were like, a person here, are there 20 people in you? And they have completely different memories, different experiences.
Did you just watch, like, the TikTok debate with all the Phil bros? Because you're like doing every single question I just got assaulted with in my last live. That's really funny. I have no problem saying that it would be 20 consciousnesses in one body. Again, this seems
But
to be
people,
proving,
people, not
yeah,
consciousnesses. Are
20
they? There's 20
people in one
people.
body. Yeah, I would say that each
So,
one is a different person.
so is it possible then to kill one of those people and not like if I killed you while you have 20 people, but you're only presenting as one, and I kill you, and your whole body dies and everything. Does everyone die, or is it just the one person because the consciousness you were only
Uh,
presenting the one consciousness?
Everyone would die, yeah, because you would be ceasing every conscious experience. In the same
I
way
see.
that like if he
So
was operating under one, but I got a needle and I just poked one that I knew located one of the
right,
and I killed it, you would still be killing a person,
right,
yeah.
right. So why is it then does it not make sense that people that do suffer from this disorder that they don't have 20 social security numbers, that they don't have, 20 different identities and they can't work it, why
Again,
don't
this
we
is this is a
intuitively
practical
do that?
question when I feel like we're talking
Oh,
about
well,
like the morality. So
right.
the practical question would be like, how could we ever know which one is presenting? Like, how could a third perspective know if it was Dave or Franco? You know what I mean? Like, there's a practical implication of this, but
Right.
if we could do it perfectly, then yeah, probably have multiple.
Okay, last question on this and then I'll
I
let
I do
you
want to
ask
ask you.
whatever.
Yeah, I
Sure,
want to have
sure.
some time for thoughts.
And I want to just maybe I'll just use it as a statement. I actually don't think that we operate in this world as if our bodies and our minds were separate. I think that we actually see them
We
as
shouldn't. Yeah.
two. Yeah, because I think if we talked about, and that's why I would present to you that we should value human life from the second it occurs, because that's when our body, that's when our minds starts to develop, that's when the things that we actually do value, because I think we do value the body mind connection, not just the mind. So like if someone is assaulted, let's say if I'm sexually assaulted, we don't say my body was assaulted, we say Taylor was assaulted. If our bodies were merely a house for our minds, we would potentially treat it would make more sense to talk about our bodies like property. Like I own my body. My body is holding me. Like it would be if I was sexually assaulted, it would be like analogous to someone breaking into my home. Or if I was assaulted while I was, let's say, in a coma, and I was, sexually assaulted, it would be like someone breaking into my home while I wasn't home. Like I would even posit to say that you wouldn't even be able to say that that was harmful to me if I was assaulted in a coma, because I would never experience it. I've never known that it had happened. If there was no harms when I didn't suffer any consequences. So that's a statement, but I also kind of want you to contend with that. That can you prove that there's
Sure.
harm being done?
Yeah, and it kind of depends. It's kind of like the same question of no, it's kind of different. There's the Trent Horn example of like a baby is going to inherit $1 million, but right when
Yes,
it's born,
which I
right?
was going to bring
And
up.
there's the
Yeah.
deprivational harm. That's
Hmm.
I think that harm requires an experiencer, and then all questions about exact experiences with harm become like harder to defend. So my position is that there isn't an experiencer, and so we don't really need to quibble about the exact experiences and the amount of harm and benefit that they produce. We can have conversations about that, but that doesn't actually attack the abortion position. Um,
So you're saying that, like, if I was assaulted in a coma, there is no harm. Is that what you
no,
said? There's
no.
no
What I'm saying
experiencer?
is that like
Okay.
there might be like a deprivational thing happening, like in the Trent Horn example, or there like you can choose to be harmed by things that happened if you want to be harmed. Harm is an internal perspective of the way that you view things. Now, it really just depends on exactly what you're asking. Like in this hypothetical, like is it harmful to like assault a dead body? It's like the question is kind of complicated because
I would say
observers
yes, it
around there
is.
would say
Yeah.
that it is, but it's
Just
not
want to let you
wrong
guys
because of
know
the
we got
perspective of
about
the
10
person.
minutes left of the open
Okay.
dialogue
Sure.
here.
I do.
Elijah, I'll let you
So yeah,
go.
Yeah.
go ahead,
Yeah.
Elijah, and
Yeah.
you can take the last 10 minutes for any questions you might want to have here.
Sure,
You
sure.
guys have been great on the back and forth, though. I feel like I, hadn't had to cut in one time, so that's much appreciated.
Thanks. This is what like a good conversation looks like, I think. So thank you,
This
Taylor,
is this is
for being good for it.
90% opposite of the last one I did. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Which
I would think I was there. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, cool, cool. But okay, what I would say is you've asked a lot of questions. Is there
Mhm.
anything that you feel like I have been inconsistent on that is solely solely addresses the abortion conversation. Because the frustrating part is that you kind of like lobbed a lot of attacks on me, and it hasn't felt like you've caught me on something that is inconsistent within the abortion framework. Like you might say that I should be a vegan, or you might say these other things, but that doesn't actually address the
Sure,
conversation that
I
I'm
can answer
saying
that.
with abortion. And the frustrating part is just to like understand what I'm trying to convey. Is the frustrating part is that I am giving I'm giving an explanation for pro-choice that you
Mhm.
can engage with. You can ask 100 questions about my position, and this can change how we view pro-choice, because we have questions about harm, like what is harm? Does harm
Mhm.
exist? Can harm be experienced? Like what about the ways of harm? Are you describing it accurately? Is there a scientific explanation about when harms exist? You can ask all of these questions, and we can have a dialogue. Your position is just, I value humans because we should value humans. And I'm missing any like prescriptive element as to why that should be the case, when I feel like I've tried to give a lot of details as to
Sure.
why we should be pro choice. But I haven't really received anything from you as to why, like what mechanisms make it to where we should be pro life.
Sure. So then the reason I'm digging is because number one, and I'll go into your view and then I'll give my justifications for my view. Because I think that the line you're drawing as far as consciousness, I find it very arbitrary. And what I've tried to prove with this line of questioning is that I think what you're going to do when you draw this line of consciousness, which I'm still not convinced why you value that why you value consciousness at all, why we value human consciousness over animals, what are the specific abilities that we value, and that I don't buy that consciousness equals personhood. I don't think that we are our consciousness. So my questions are trying to get you to show me why that is. Um, and as far as my justifications for just my position, I believe that when we talk about what is moral, we have to start with like the very basic moral foundation. So things like humans have inherent worth. I think this explains a lot of things about why it's wrong to rape, why it's wrong to torture. And so just that very basic of why are human beings valuable? Why do we value, human beings? And so I think we value them because we are of the rational kind. We are the kind that it can experience rationality. Not, I don't, I'm not convinced by your position that you have to have the immediate capacity to deploy consciousness, or that you have to develop far enough to even have a conscious experience. Much like I would say a woman is of the kind that can have a baby, that can birth a baby, even when she's not actively pregnant, or maybe will never be pregnant, maybe she's infertile. I would still say that she's of the kind that is a woman. That's how we just define women. So I
What I
think my position is the safest position to say that we value human beings. And I think I've addressed your examples in which we kind of change the value of humans, that there are different conversations to be had about, let's say, the death penalty or
why
manslaughter versus homicide. Go ahead.
sorry, you can continue, but what I will say is that there hasn't really been a prescriptive element. You've just described a lot of things that humans are this, but there's not really a why. I attempted to provide a why, which is consciousness is something that we value, because once there's consciousness, you can be harmed. We can like start to do harms talk, and harms are bad and benefits are good, and we can start to do that once there's an experiencer. But
Well, what
even
I
in in the description that you've just given, human life isn't intrinsically valuable. And so obviously the pro life argument, or the pro choice argument, is that abortion should be an edge case. And I haven't gotten a prescription as to why that shouldn't be the case.
Sure. So I'm pointing to some sort of objective morality, right? Which is going to be, we should strive for the good. We should strive for what is good. The good for me is ultimately going to relate to God, to divine command theory. So that is my moral foundation. I think your moral foundation of this subjective view of harm, to say, well, now there's someone that can be harmed and harm is bad. I'm not even sure that you can tell me why harm is bad in your worldview. You're saying harm is bad because harm is bad, and we understand that harm is bad, and it's kind of this preferential experience when your idea of harm can be much different from my idea of harm. So if we want to talk about moral foundations, I think I have much stronger
Do
foundations
you
for
do you
humans
agree
having
that
inherent
harm
worth.
is Do you agree that harm is bad?
Not always. No, not always. Well, if you told me you defined harm as suffering, right? In
Sure.
a sense, because okay, so no, I
Do you
don't
agree
think
that
that
suffering
suffering
is
is always
bad?
bad. I actually think suffering is necessary
Well,
in the human
that's not the
experience.
same thing, right? I mean,
Okay, so then no, I don't. I'll no, I don't think suffering is always bad. I think that
well,
sometimes unnecessary stuff.
Suffering is bad, but if there's a goal, the goodness outweighs the suffering, but the suffering's still bad. Otherwise, we wouldn't be considering it suffering.
I guess, but I guess
And then there's the unconsensual suffering, which would be what you would be placing on a fetus
but
after
why? I
20
guess for
weeks.
you, why is suffering bad? Why is that bad?
I would say there's a biological wiring that suffering is bad, probably.
What if someone was biologically wired to not feel like suffering is bad? What if we could?
They would
What if
have
someone just didn't feel pain or didn't have that kind of? So they were very depressed, so they didn't have this kind of will to live. What if are they not
well, they would have a
capable
version
of
of
suffering?
suffering. It would be whatever causes them. But maybe what you're asking is do we have like objective things that are always considered suffering or do it's something like that, but they would have their own version of suffering, something that's avoidable, something that they are biologically wired to
Like
oppose.
you're so your kind of moral foundation in general is that we should have like is your kind of idea like we should avoid suffering at all like the highest good, let's say, in a society is to avoid as much harm and as much suffering as possible. Would you say that?
Yeah, probably, but you can put suffering on yourself if you want, if you view that. I would say like a huge suffering, like a huge aspect of suffering is when it's or it's unconsensual when it's placed onto you. This would be maybe the words that you use like needless suffering or pointless suffering or something like that.
But
When you
I
add a
guess
point
it's
to
just
it, it
so,
becomes something.
so shaky because suffering. You have to admit that suffering is subjective. It just is, right? Your suffering might not be my suffering. Like I
Well,
enjoy
that doesn't mean
running.
that
Not
it's
everyone enjoys
subjective.
running. They may just be suffering the whole time, right?
If
So
well, if you are suffering with something that is objectively true, at least with your perspective, but what you're saying is that like there might not be something that is suffering for everybody. That's kind of what you're saying, but suffering
correct.
is
So
objective from your perspective.
for, objective from my perspective is just
Objective,
subjective.
no, because any bad thing has to requires an experience. Like that's like saying like
That's what
morality
you.
isn't
That's
objective
you're
because
begging the question because I haven't bought into the idea that harm requires an experiencer. I'm not sure that
well,
that
what
has
I'm
been
saying
proven.
is that there is like a phenomenological experience of suffering that is like objectively there. But
There's
you're
an
talking about like morality.
right.
Yeah, you're talking about moral implications of suffering, which I'm
Things of
saying
suffering.
doesn't matter because the amount of suffering that exists in a fetus is zero. So we don't even
Right,
need to like we don't even need to talk about
but if we
levels
want to talk
or
about specific
experiences.
sufferings like pain or any sort of pain, we can say that that exists, that that is like a signal in the brain or something, but that doesn't mean that it's good or like that's not a moral conclusion, right? That it is good or bad, and that part is what is going to be subjective, right? Because sure, I can say like if we dump boiling water on anybody, like it's gonna hurt, but again, like that kind of level of goodness or badness like has to boil down to why is it bad? Why is it bad to harm people? Because like let me offer you this. If I would say that we could eliminate human suffering tomorrow, okay? We can eliminate all people's harm and suffering tomorrow, but all we have to do is keep a 10-year-old locked in a basement and torture him for eternity. Would you think that that is a good thing in your worldview if I said that the amount of suffering is going to go down by 99.99% in the world?
Yeah, okay. What I will say is that we're getting into a fundamentally different conversation because what I'm
Yes,
positing about abortion is that there is zero suffering. So we don't even need to
right.
weigh these
Which
things. But just for funsies, for your example, what I would say is that it seems like there's a multiplier with negatives and positives that require like choice. And so it's like if a negative is bestowed upon you unconsensually, that's like in a million times multiplier. And then like something like that. So like maybe you could even say that you can't like the ultimate negative is to have a negative bestowed upon you unconsensually or something
so
like
what's your
that.
answer to
And so
my hypothetical?
you could say that like augment. I would say no because again like there's probably like an augment to the suffering of that one person that makes it outweigh the benefits of the other people.
Okay. You said something earlier and it made me think of another line of thinking, but I kind of lost it. So
What I will
I
say
get
is,
it.
again,
Yeah,
oh, sorry.
maybe time for one more question,
sure, go ahead.
Elijah,
Let
or
Elijah do it. Yeah.
statement, and then if you guys feel like it, you can give like a quick closing if you want, but you're not required to. It's just kind of typical.
Sure, sure.
2 to
Well,
5 minutes.
okay. This will be somewhat of a closing thought, I think, but I'll say it first so that Taylor can maybe respond to it. But what I will say is hopefully there's a little bit of an uncomfortability because when I ask about these things, like what is the prescription, the frustrating part is that like when we're talking to the masses, the second like God gets involved as a prescriptive element as to why you should do something, you've already disenfranchised like 50% of the moral agents because maybe they don't believe in God, or they don't think that God is the arbiter of objective morality or something like that. And so I hope that in these arguments I've at least tried to give a system by which we can talk about these things. And I think when you think about this and you don't have preconceptions that like killing humans is wrong, which isn't even true, but let's say you have that prescription, you have that idea, that doesn't actually tell you why it's wrong. Whereas like you can say that something is harmful and that's why it's wrong because we should reduce harms, and this is something that even Taylor can work with, even though her moral system is maybe outside of harms and benefits or isn't totally constricted by harms and benefits, she can engage in conversations about harms and benefits, hence the hour-long conversation we just had. Whereas the moral system that she's positing is we should do this because we should. And I think that that's not enough if you don't already share the same intuition that she has about value and what value means. And it seems like I'm operating under an intuition, but this isn't the case because we just had a conversation operating under my intuition. So it's not just mine, it's ours. It's an intuition that everyone shares. And so I think, Taylor, if you could just, in maybe your closing remarks, if you have a thought about this, if you want to address like the actual prescriptive element, it might be beneficial for maybe the pro-life viewers who have gotten this far. But otherwise, that's most of the questions that I have.
All right, Taylor, it's all you, and
Sure.
then we'll get into the Q&A. Guys, get your super chats in, like the video, subscribe if you're one of their fans and you've never been on our page before, and then get your tickets to DebateCon 8 in Dallas. That is going to be in July. It's going to be fun. You guys lower your voices in the chat. I see you screaming in there. Lowercase doesn't cost anything. All right, go ahead, Taylor.
All right. So number one, just as a quick closing, I'll say that in this debate tonight, I don't think my opponent has proven why we should value consciousness, where consciousness actually begins, what are the traits that we should value. I don't even think he's proven why harm is bad. In general, I think that his definition of consciousness and personhood excludes a lot of human beings and includes a lot of non-human beings. So to just kind of quickly respond to what he said. So I think that valuing human life because they are of the rational kind, I think that is a foundational reason. And I think a lot of people share that moral intuition. And I think it explains a lot of the ways that we build laws and a lot of the ways that we interact with the world. And I think that just because maybe some of the population doesn't believe in God, it doesn't mean that they're not kind of borrowing from the Judeo-Christian moral system, this kind of idea of objective morality, because I think what Elijah's done tonight is kind of granted himself a lot of universals without much justification for that. So again, I think an objective morality to say that, God has written the moral law in our hearts, and that's why a lot of us understand this kind of inherent difference between right and wrong, and why a lot of the hypotheticals I posed to Elijah, I think why a lot of his answers maybe seem kind of ridiculous or not consistent with the way we think is because I think a lot of us do have this inherent objective morality. And I don't think that having the preconceived notion that humans, that we should value humans just because they're humans, I don't think my position is the controversial one there. So yeah, I'll close it there. I really appreciate Elijah for being like a great opponent, and I really enjoy talking with him. So thanks, everybody.
You too, Taylor.
All right, guys, I was just kidding about the screaming in the chat. I know some of you are boomers who can't read if you don't type in all caps. It's fine. And the chat's not even going that fast. So, I mean, I don't know why you're having difficulty. Okay, we're going to get into the questions. And we are going to have a section here that I'm going to call Six of Spades interrogation section, because he sent in a string of them, and I think they're back to back. All right, first one here we got is Richie Constitution 2112 for 5 says, Elijah, would you be okay with a woman having multiple abortions because she wanted a boy, but the baby was a girl? Is that morally okay in your eyes?
Yeah, this is probably the case because to me it would be the same as like if I knew that I had sex with a specific person that the result would be a boy and I chose not to have sex with that person. I don't think it would be immoral. To me, it would be when you're asked, you got to think about it in harms in the perspective that I've described. So the harms would be the same as choosing to not have sex. So it'd be like choosing to not have sex with a person because you know it's going to produce a boy. If it were immoral, it wouldn't be because of some harm principle. It would be because of some internal prejudice that you have that's likely to escape out to other people or something. I think it's wrong to only want boys, but that's not necessarily the question that's being asked.
Taylor, would you like to respond to that?
Just if I were to answer that question, obviously I would say yes, but not because of what Elijah said, just because I think that we should value humans for more than, human and gender. So that would be my justification.
So she should just keep trying until she has a boy.
Yeah, but I also don't think it's wrong to just want boys, just so you know. So I think it's fine. I think it's not okay to kill the girls, but I think it's fine to just want a certain
Oh
gender.
yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. All right. Thanks for answering. SSIA underscore SP 9847 sends $10. Thank you very much for the support. For Elijah, if a man secretly slips pills into his pregnant wife's food or drink to kill their offspring before 20 weeks because he doesn't want a child, should he be charged with murder?
I mean, you can say whatever with the practicality of it. You could definitely say destruction of property if you wanted to say something more moral about that. You can do that. This is again like with the double homicide case. It's like it's cringe to say my body, my choice because that's not actually my argument. But it's your body, someone else's choice, and so whatever they deem punishable for it is probably the case. Murder, if that's the way that you viewed it, it kind of just depends on the how the internal perspective of the value that the mother places on it. But I would say definitely destruction of property. Murder would be maybe something else. Probably not murder, because murder usually entails that a perspective is being ended. But it's definitely something very immoral for sure.
Okay, Taylor, just to clarify on that last question, you wouldn't be okay with the woman having multiple abortions, right?
Correct.
Okay, because
That's
people in the
shocking.
chat might have misunderstood you.
No, I mean, like, it's fine to just, I think it's fine for me to have, like, a gender, like, if I'm pregnant and I want a boy, it's okay to want a boy. Because I think, so, did you say that, I think Elijah said it's not okay to just want boys or something. Did you say that?
Yeah, like,
Like,
if
I
you
think
had
it's
if you
fine
had
to
like
have
a
a gender
prejudice,
preference.
it's like
It's not a prejudice, like a preference, but I also, obviously, I'm
Yeah,
against
no.
abortion no matter what.
Yeah, I'm not judging you. I just think the chat thought you said, yes, it's okay.
Oh, yeah, that's my one thing,
her whole
guys.
position.
No.
Yeah, she hates abortion unless
Yeah,
it's
but if it's guys, I don't care, yeah.
yeah.
All right, good. I'm glad we clarified that. Okay. We got. Did you want to say anything in regards to should the man be charged for murder for slipping the pills in to his
Yes,
pregnant wives?
of course.
Okay.
And I think a lot of us share that intuition that
Charge
would
him with
be
murder. Got it. All right.
not
That's
It would be
damage, yeah.
incredibly immoral and deserves a charge. Murder is maybe a different charge than
Same
I would
moral
say.
as breaking, like, hurting my mailbox or something, property damage, that level of morality.
I imagine that the value that they place on the work done is probably more than that.
Got it.
But
Okay.
it just depends.
okay. Orthodox Phronesis for 5 says this is the perfect example of weak men create hard times. A female doing what the man should be doing, defending life. Do better, Elijah. Thank you, Orthodox Phronesis.
That's
Love you
true.
too, buddy. All right. Taylor, do you want to say anything?
No, that's not nice. But
I hate life. I really do. That's what my position stems from, is a hate for life.
Let me throw some axes in the chat real quick. Okay. All right. We are now. I'm gonna skip the first one, 6 of spades, so I can hit them all in a row. So this one's from Madtho, I think. For 10, are these New Zealand dollars? Are those different in American dollars? I'm not sure. If a woman took a drug that would cause their yet to be sentient unborn child to die at birth, would that be immoral? And if so, who would be the subject that is being acted on for it to be immoral? I think this is kind of more towards you, Taylor, maybe.
Think that
I
might be
think it's
me.
I
for
think it's
Eliza,
Yeah.
yeah.
or
Future harm.
yeah, either.
Yeah.
Well, I'd ask for both of your answers on that. Basically, it sounds like they're describing a morning after pill. Maybe they don't have that in New Zealand.
Well, the question was up to birth.
Oh, no, no, no.
So
To die at birth. You're right.
yeah.
You're right.
So
Yeah, no, this would be a unique drug.
yeah. So if they die at birth, then there was an experience that was happening between 20 weeks and birth, and so you prevented that experience from happening, and so it's the same as murder.
I think this question and your answer actually illustrates that there can be harm to a non-experiencer, even if the experience happens later. I think it kind of goes back to the Trent Horn like lottery problem, and was something I
Well,
was
my
going to say
argument
that
is
was
they are
similar.
experiencing between 20 to
But
birth.
my point is that even if they're not experiencing, there is harm being done. Like if I kind of, fetal alcohol syndrome, like when you're pregnant, actually from 0 to like the first 12 weeks are actually the most important to not do anything bad, because that's like one of the most important stages of development. So I would say that like if I were to drink, let's say from 0 to 19 weeks and then stop, just because the baby isn't feeling the harm, yet or whatever, like that, I think that proves that I can harm something that in your eyes is a non-experiencer.
Well, the
This
harm,
is being
yeah,
done.
from my perspective, the harm wouldn't happen until it actualizes. And so if I like did that pill that killed it and then it didn't kill them, no, there was no harm done. Because there was no harm experienced. In the like with the fetal alcohol syndrome, you're harming a future experiencer. But in
Right, but
abortion, you're
isn't death
preventing
the
a.
ultimate harm of a
But it,
future
yeah, I know
experiencer?
the in the abortion situation, you are preventing an experience from ever happening, which happens all
Which
the time.
which would you say is harmful
No,
to prevent something that was? Is there not a percentage difference at least of possibility of a conscious experience
there
from
is. There is
from
a very
a
big percentage
19
difference.
week
Yeah.
old fetus versus having maybe not having sex? I think that's important.
Yeah, there's a big percentage difference, and I do agree with you. I think that maybe pro-choice people do not focus on how big of a difference that is, but I don't think it's enough to. I don't think it goes against my position, but it is true. There is a big percentage difference.
All right. So we are now entering the six of spades CC interrogation session. First one for $10, he says, you can never prove consciousness doesn't start at conception. So erring on the side of conception is rational and the only option outside of someone's subjective starting point.
I could say the same thing. You can never prove that trees aren't conscious. They're alive, but I can never prove that they're not conscious, so we probably shouldn't de- cause deforestation or the concrete that I step on or bugs that I kill. We can never prove that they aren't conscious, but that's kind of like a highly skeptical position. We have pretty good evidence for it, so.
Are you ready for his response to your response there? Because
Yeah,
he
he
already thought of it.
preloaded. Yeah, yeah.
$10 from Six of Spades responds to your response preemptively. He says, show me when someone goes from 0% consciousness to 1 to 100% consciousness. Monster.
Again, I don't have to. I'm arguing a moral position, not necessarily a practical position. So if we know consciousness, well, I guess if you're hyper skeptic and you don't believe anything, you maybe don't know that. But it's extremely reasonable to assume, in the same way that we assume all scientific or biological processes, that consciousness doesn't happen at conception. And then you can ask the question, does it happen at 5 weeks? Does it happen at 7 weeks? Does it happen at 11 weeks? Whatever. And then you can draw the line wherever that is. But I'm asking a moral question. It's immoral to have an abortion once there's a conscious experience happening. If you want to ask a practical question as to when that conscious experience happens, we just play it as safe as we can, while also respecting the ability for the mother to perform an abortion if she wants.
Yeah, there was something about you guys talking earlier about verbal communication or sentience or something maybe. Because then he left this next question. For $10, Six of Spades says, oh, so if I'm unable to verbally communicate to you, I'm not a person, you're a joke.
I hope that's a bit. But I mean, if he wants
That's
to
what
come
he
up here
said.
and argue too, I mean, that's obviously not my position, right? My entire position relies on assumptive premises that a future adult is able to communicate it, and they have brain parts. Fetus has brain parts, but they can't communicate it to us, so we should assume they have consciousness. That's how the argument works. I think he's being satirical. I hope so, but yeah.
All right, couple left here. Six of spades for another $10
Get him on
says
here, bro.
LMAO, I don't want or value you, Elijah. Am I justified to take you out?
I hope I don't
Because
need to answer
if
this
you
soon.
say that, the mother, doesn't want it or doesn't value, then she's justified to make that choice.
I
Uh,
think that this should be a good lesson about good faith understanding of what the position that is being stated. And if something sounds ridiculous to you, it probably is ridiculous to you. So, but my position is that I'm an experiencer. You can't rip the autonomy of an experiencer. The fetus isn't an experiencer. Therefore, it's not wrong to
he,
rip the autonomy of
he
the
just
non-experiencer.
replied in the comments and said, "That's what you said."
That's true. Dang it! He knows me so well. He knows me better than I know me. What the heck?
LOL. All right, one last one for $10. Six of spades. Thank you so much for the support, bro. And same with the other night. You were holding it down during the Jay and Captain debate. Um, okay, he says you're frustrating and offer no system. It's completely arbitrary and by definition without a system.
I think that's the accusation I was making of Taylor, but I don't know if he agrees with me or if he's saying that I'm doing the same thing. I'm providing a system which is harms and benefits. Um, Taylor
Heaven,
is defining
sorry.
something which may or may not. I disagree that this is a prescriptive system at all, but I don't know if you have clarifications on this.
Heaven Max, I'm gonna read this just because it's kind of funny, but I do expect a super chat when you do get your card hooked up. I know you're in a spot right now, but Heaven Max says, "Oh, look out, we got an experiencer."
True, true. That's us,
Okay,
bro.
Tazzy Dazzy 69 for $2 says, "Does Dave have consciousness?" I think is Dave a YouTuber?
Then probably not. Is he pro-life or pro-choice? If he's pro-life, then no. I'm kidding. Tough room.
That's cold, bro. That's cold. Okay. No experience is needed for it to be harmed by objective definition, says acting brand new 86.
If Webster says so, then I guess there's no need for conversation.
And Taylor, you're more than welcome to jump in on any of these and give an opinion. It's not just strictly at Elijah.
Well, can I just say quickly about something you said earlier about the trees? Because
Hmm.
you said, like,
We can't assume
oh,
that trees aren't
yeah,
conscious. Yeah.
right. So, but what I would say is that we have very strong evidence to know that trees have never been conscious and never will be conscious, and that it's not like if we left a tree alone for a certain amount of time that it was walking around and having rational thoughts. We have very good evidence to know that the baby in the womb from conception and we leave it alone and we don't take it out of its natural environment, that it will become conscious. So that seems like a
Well,
very important. It's not just it's not the same thing as to say, well, just because we can't know that this will happen at this moment, that it will never happen. Like with trees, we know that's never going to happen, at least from our
from that
experience.
perspective, a fetus also can't communicate consciousness directly, but it's very
No, I
reasonable to
agree,
assume that it does have it.
or that it
What we
will.
can
But
say is that there's an
even,
entirely
even
real
if
possibility that a tree isn't conscious. It just can't communicate it to us justifiably. It could be conscious. There's no way to
But
prove
even
that
if
it
I
isn't.
enter into your worldview and say, fine, I don't value the consciousness until 24 weeks, but I know that from every piece of evidence and everything we've seen from how humans have been created since the beginning of time, that if we leave a baby alone in the womb from 0 weeks till 24 weeks, it will develop this thing that we value. If I'm in your worldview, a tree has never and will never do that.
Yeah, if a tree had a brain, we should assume it's conscious, even if it never communicated conscious to us. If a tree had our brain, we should assume that it's conscious. And so the argument that I'm making is that without a brain, a lot of everything that doesn't have a brain is certainly not conscious. Everything that does has a brain have some form of consciousness, and that's kind of the assumption that we're making. If we're uncomfortable with that assumption, we'd want to consult the neurologists on that, I think.
Oh, I'll leave it there.
This is related to the Dave question. Enforcer Goofy since $2 says, "See now that Dave is pro-life, will you go pro-choice?" Or Taylor, now that Dave is pro-life, will you go pro-choice?
I don't know who Dave is. Am
Well,
I
Why does
old?
everyone in the chat think we know who Dave is? Post his description or something. All right, we got some more that all just flooded in at the last second here. We still had a couple to get through though, I think. Bubblegum 3292 for 5 says, Elijah, are you just saying something is right or wrong because your Sky Daddy government, that's in parentheses, says it's wrong? Why ought we listen to your made up God?
Uh, I don't know if I ever made an appeal to government or to law. I've been like very purposefully non-legal about the terms that I'm using. I'm using instead like a philosophical definition of harms and benefits, and it's empirical at the very least. That's what our neurology and psychology tries to say, and I say that harms stem from this. But if you have a disagreement on the moral foundation, that's fine, but you need to communicate what that is and why we should follow it. But you'll see that Taylor has a moral foundation that includes God, but was able to engage in this rhetoric because she has an intuitive understanding that harm is bad and this is good. She thinks that there's more to philosophy than just that, but she has the intuitive position that harm is bad. And so we were able to have a conversation about this. So I don't necessarily see the point.
Okay, people in the chat are saying Dave is a YouTube parody music guy, and then Orthophrenesis says I'm Dave. Everyone is Dave, and then someone else Tazzy Dazzy just sent $2 to say Dave is a known T-Fog fan. How don't you know him?
I don't even know what T-Fog is.
That's me,
that's
Taylor
her.
Fogarty.
Oh,
And honestly, that was like my email when I was a kid, like T-Fog.
Do they call
21.
that's like a rapper name? That's sick. T-Fog.
I don't know how you knew my
I'm
rapper
referring
name.
that to I'm referring
Yeah.
to you as that from now on.
That makes
Dave
sense.
is everything.
T-Fog.
Everyone is asking who is Dave, but no one's asking how is Dave.
True.
Right. Aw.
All right. Okay, we got some more here. Linux Audio 100 sends $5. Thank you. I don't know if those are American dollars. Yeah, it looks like. To both, is abortion moral to avoid extreme future suffering? E.g., if the fetus is diagnosed with severe muscular dystrophy that will kill before 20. I don't know if muscular dystrophy kills necessarily. It just makes life really difficult. But that's just because I grew up next door to someone who had it. But that's y'all's question to answer. My bad.
Yeah, I would obviously say no, and that it is not moral to kill, even to prevent future suffering. I don't know how Elijah will handle this because I think his morality in general is based on harms and suffering and the reductions of suffering. So that's a good question that I could have asked him: is what if we know that the baby in the womb is going to have, a mass amount of suffering? What if they're only going to live for 2 weeks outside of the womb in immense pain? Would you say that it is just more moral to kill them?
I'm assuming you're asking like after 20 weeks?
Yeah, after 20 weeks.
No, because they would need to consent to this, and they can't. So
I don't know if it has to do with 20 weeks at all, or where did that come
she's
from?
asking because obviously my position is before 20 weeks. Of course it's fine. After
Okay,
20 weeks,
I might have missed that.
Yeah. So she's saying after 20, why would it be wrong? Because there's more harm happening.
Okay, Linux Audio is saying Duchenne muscular dystrophy does kill by 20. Oh, interesting. Wow. Okay. Gooberang for $5 says, I like saying that screen name. Gooberang. You're asking practical questions, but that was a quote of one of you. Just means your ideas might seem good in theory, but not in practicing practicality.
Yeah, that's why legality is different from philosophy, is because the practicality of things is sometimes different or difficult than the morality of it. My position is purely that an elective abortion is immoral after 20 weeks. So that's all I've posited, really. There might be practical implications, but...
All right. So then I assume that was towards you.
I think so, yeah.
Taylor, do you have an opinion, response?
Well, I would say in general, when I'm not even sure all my hypotheticals pointed towards practicality, just about what kind of our moral intuitions are. And while I agree there's some more nuance and complexities to law and putting things into practice, I think in general our morality points towards law, or at least our laws should point towards morality. So when we say it's illegal to murder, it's illegal to rape, like Elijah's right to dig deeper into like, well, why are these things wrong? So
yeah, exactly. I mean, I agree. That's why the question is always cheating is immoral, but should it be illegal? Because there's
Uh-huh.
practical implications about that question.
Mhm.
But I don't think you were asking practical. You were asking very philosophical questions. There were like one or two that were practical, and then the audience questions were practical, which is what I think he was quoting me for.
Okay. All right, we're moving on here. All right, Nathan Cummings, 6470 for $5 says, "Why are you alive if you hate life?"
True, true. I do hate life. I do hate life.
But Elijah, you're gonna suffer and there'll be harms.
That's
Is it
true.
even worth it?
That's true. Well, I think that like I'm a optimist by trade, so I think that living life is worth the suffering. But
I
the
agree.
question about
Said
abortion
by
is
trade,
that
you
before.
you get paid to be an optimist?
I hope I got my degree in philosophy, but I ain't
In
getting paid for it.
optimism.
I can tell you that. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Optimist by development, maybe. But what I would say is that the question isn't again not weighing harms and suffering. It's preventing either harms or suffering. It's just prevention of an experience, prevention of an agent that would be suffering or benefiting.
All right. This is a continuation of the New Zealanders question. If the baby isn't sentient when the drug is taken, who is the harm being done to?
The experiencer when the harm is actualized. Like I said, if the pill didn't work, then there would be no harm. But it isn't the act of inserting the pill that's harmful necessarily. If it doesn't get actualized, where the intent to harm is bad, but that's like a different type of bad than maybe like an experienced harm. So I feel like I feel like this is obvious. I'm trying to communicate this, but like maybe there's something I'm missing. But when you're the harm happens when the harm happens, not when the act to harm happens. So
I think I could even agree with this to an extent to say, okay, like if you poison me and I don't die for 24 hours, the harm, the ultimate harm happens when I die in 24 hours, but the onset of that harm happened before the 24 hours. And even if I agreed with you, and you said, okay, I give them a drug and it doesn't happen until let's say 24 weeks, and that's the harm, and you say that is harmful because they have some sort of effects, I would say death is the ultimate harm, to say that sort of deprivation of life of a future like ours.
yeah, like the immoral action can happen before the harm happens.
Right.
And so my definition of harm, which is obviously heavily disagreed upon in this debate, is that there needs to be an experiencer for it. And so there is no harm of death if there's no experiencer, because you're preventing the experience from ever happening. And so it would be the same, like the harmful or the evil immoral act happens when the pill is administered, but the harm doesn't happen until the harm happens.
And death is not a harm in this for you.
In abortion, it isn't, because there's no experiencer. You're preventing an experience from happening. But in like 99.9% of cases, death
And
is a harm.
preventing an experience from happening is not harm in your worldview.
Yes, preventing an experience from happening is not harm. Yep,
Okay, I think that's not intuitive, but
All right.
probably.
Well, I appreciate you guys sharing your thoughts on that. I'm sure the New Zealander does as well. Okay, Yu-Gi-Oh! Dual Channel for $5. That's cool. There's a Yu-Gi-Oh! Dual Channel, everyone. Um, Elijah, if a dictator had the Infinity Gauntlet and every 5 weeks snaps and aborts all fetuses and does this on perpetuity, would this be wrong? I guess every 5 weeks does and aborts all fetuses in
An abort.
perpetuity. Would
I
this be
mean,
wrong?
every fetus that is aborted before or after 20 weeks is obviously wrong under my position. But this would be the same reason that it's wrong to like, prevent somebody from, or like stop somebody from being pregnant because they had the intention to keep the baby going. It wouldn't be harm because of the experience of the fetus, but it would likely be harm because of the experience of the parents.
If you had to answer that, Taylor, I obviously feel like I can intuit your answer, but
I'd say yeah, that sounds pretty wrong to me.
just want to hear it from your. You want to put words
I'd
in
say
your
it's
mouth.
wrong too, but for different reasons than Taylor. I
Yeah.
think.
Okay. And what would be your reasons if Did you give a specific
Yeah,
there? I
and
was typing something in the
no,
chat.
that's okay.
Sorry.
And actually, I could clarify. Taylor and I actually agree on the reasons that it's wrong. Taylor just has more reasons for why it's wrong on top of it. Because she would agree that it's wrong because the mother is losing her potential child, so all of the work that went in, from the mother's perspective, she's losing something that she put work into, which is something that Taylor agrees is harmful, but she agrees that there's more than just that. But I would just say that also exists.
Right. I would agree that it's wrong to kill a 5-week-old fetus, or he said every 5 weeks, but before 20 weeks, because you're killing the mother surely harmed, but you are killing an innocent human being. I would say even if the mother didn't know she was pregnant at, let's say, 18 weeks, some sort of cryptic pregnancy, I would say that there's still harm being done.
Yeah. I would disagree with that for the reasons
Yeah.
that I've stated, but yeah.
Right.
Okay. Let me just double check here. A couple of you listened when I typed into like the video in the chat. If you could do that if you haven't, that'd be awesome. And then we do have some memberships. You guys can get those if you would like to watch the videos that are streamed live at DebateCon 8. We're not going to post those until weeks to months after, in a slow drip, of course, for the content algo. But you can watch them all live if you get a membership. And I believe that is called the Final Word membership. Okay. Now that this advert's completed, back to the questions. Stacy Flores 899 for $5 says, "If we don't value cute, innocent babies, what do we value?"
True.
All
We
right, she
value
got you
nothing.
there.
We value nothing.
$5 to stump them. Thank you, Stacy. That's appreciate your support. That's a good question. If Enforcer Goofy for $2 says, "T, now that wait, did I already read that? I did already read that. I'm
T-Fog.
sorry. Yeah, I did already read that. I don't think he sent it twice. I think my screenshots got mixed up. Fairax 7977 cents $5 says, "So according to Eli, Ravens, may I call you Eli?"
If you do it, you got to do it with personality. You got to be like
Uh,
Eli, otherwise it doesn't
okay.
fly under the radar.
So according to Eli, ravens who can solve puzzles and dolphins who mourn their young don't have a subjective experience, but a 20-week-old fetus does. 20-week-old fetus does.
A lot of heavily personified language. If you put a bacteria in a maze, it's going to find the way out because there's direction. But we got to be careful of associating actions to purposeful decisions. Like even mourn the loss is like a really questionable. There's like so many assumptions. Like we're making a prediction that if they do something, if it were humans, we'd do it this way. There's a lot of language that we're using there. And so I mean it's possible we already dislike killing dolphins. Like there's humanitarian acts. I'd probably think that it's wrong to kill dolphins probably, but it just depends. So
Okay. Thank you for that. And appreciate you guys continuing the questions. I thought we were going to end a little early there, and you guys keeping it going. Thanks for everybody who's been joining. Right, we got. How do I have so many screenshots of the Dave questions? Okay, Tazzy Dazzy for $2 says, "Elijah, did you choose that mustache?"
stop. I like it, dude. My face looks so chubby when I don't have the mustache on. It needs to stay there, otherwise I look like my face is melted. Like I need it there. I did choose the mustache. I also don't grow it good enough to I want to get the Hulk Hogan going on the sides here, but it just doesn't grow well enough. So I'm sorry.
Handlebar is the word you're looking
Yeah,
for.
there we go.
Okay. Next question. Enforcer Goofy says, "Elijah, is Dave worth more than a $2 super chat?"
Dave is worth $1 million. If
You don't
if
even
he's
know
a
who Dave
fan
is.
of my homie T-Fog, then he's then he deserves $1 million.
Yeah, I agree there.
That's fair. Okay. We got Yu-Gi-Oh! Dual Channel back with another 5. Thank you, sir. About the tree example, I think a better framing is humans are intrinsically rational beings. Either at conception or later, we don't know. Trees are not.
Yeah, but the premise that you're saying is that we can't know that fetuses aren't rational at that time, in the same way that we can't know that a tree. So like the saying that a tree isn't rational in nature relies on the certainty that you're questioning in the fetus example. So it seems like it's not fair.
Opinion, Taylor?
Well, I think in the same way of like you're saying, well, I know, you're saying that animals don't have a certain level of consciousness.
I wouldn't say I know that. I like eating meat,
you're
but
assuming
I'm saying
that.
that we have
Well, that's
good
what I'm
evidence
saying.
for it.
Oh,
Yeah,
everyone's
you're
calling you a vegan in the chat.
Well, that's because he's a hypocrite because he
That's
values
true.
consciousness,
I
but
like
not
bacon.
vegan.
Okay.
But yeah, the point is that you're kind of saying, well, maybe animals have consciousness, and this is kind of what we're going to value, but we know for certain that humans are of the kind of consciousness you value, and that why because consciousness is such an immaterial thing, which you've agreed to. There's really no reason to think that it couldn't happen right at conception. I guess is the point, is that like from your view of like kind of playing it safe, even pushing your weeks back to 20, would not the safest week be 0? Since you know that they are of the kind, and you're also certain that, not certain, but you're eating animals based on the fact that you're certain enough to eat them, that they're not of that kind, right? Is that
Yeah, I get what you're saying. What I would say is that the safest option would be conception if there wasn't another end of the spectrum that we're trying to account for, which would be like the autonomy of the mother, or the ability for her to fix a mistake if she wants.
You don't really care about the autonomy of a mother, because if a woman didn't realize she was pregnant until 20 weeks, let's say, and then didn't want that baby, you would not permit an abortion, would you?
Yeah, because there'd be an experience, because now there's the autonomy of the fetus.
But that's begging the question, right? Because the question is there an experiencer at conception, right? Because that's the playing it safe. That's what we're trying to get to.
Well, all I was addressing was that, like, I would agree with you that it would be the safest it'd be the safest at 0, but there's another side of the equation that we need that needs to pull us further away from that. That's the only point that I was making. To address the consciousness question, it's like if we can assume that a fetus is conscious, then bacteria should be conscious, because they I don't think that's rational too. Because the reason why we assume that bacteria aren't of conscious mind or aren't of rational mind is because they never develop a consciousness. But it could be true that they have a consciousness, we just don't know it. And so the reason why we can assume that things have consciousness in the first place, the reason why we know that there's a rational mind to even speak of, is because of the association between a brain and then consciousness.
Let me just read this real quick. If you have something else to say, you can say it after. Just looks like this gentleman's going to bed, and he's been a great supporter tonight. 6 of spades sends $10. He says, Taylor, read up on these lame arguments / obvious counters and read some philosophy, and you do way better. Elijah, you're a clown. Good night, MDD. 07, Darth Raven doesn't know what a fallacy is. Lamau. Thank you, 6 of spades. Very much appreciate your support tonight, sir. We'll see you next time. And then, did you have a response? Because if not, I also want to just read this one real quick. Nathan Cummins sends $5, says, listen. Are you listening? Fart noise.
Nice.
Amazing.
Thank you, Nathan. Appreciate that, sir. Okay. If you wanted to respond to that other comment a second ago, you're more than welcome. About the tree example or consciousness, knowing whether something's conscious or not.
Well, I guess I'd push on the brain structures of consciousness, because I would just maybe say that we know animals have brains. And I think what the person about the dolphins was pointing to is that we have this sort of intuition that what we value is emotion and memory and kind of personality, which I think we see all of those things in animals, especially smarter animals, dolphins and pigs and things like that. So I, again, think it's just not a consistent position.
Do people think my name is James in the chat? I'm not James.
Your name tag says James, though. Like,
you're James in spirit.
Yeah, but it doesn't say it on the stream.
Oh.
Just you guys are in the Zoom.
Got it.
Unless y'all are streaming this on something else and they're watching it there and commenting here.
No.
Okay. Nathan Cummins sent another $5, by the way, and he said, just focus on getting rich. Put your heart and soul into it. Stop at nothing. You will love life after. Well, Nathan, if that's true, you can send more than $5, good sir.
Damn, true.
Oh, you just sent 20.
Okay. Then, all right, I believe it's true now.
Oh, true.
Money where your mouth is.
Yes. I didn't skip it on purpose, bro. Did not skip it on purpose. But he did just send 20 and he said, "You skipped my other two chats, bad boy." Well, you shouldn't reward me for being a bad boy now, should you?
Whoa.
This is a family show.
Oh, I'm just
Some
saying.
romantic
Do you pay
tension.
you pay someone for doing something that you don't want them to do? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Uh okay. Skater Boy 420 sends $2. He says, "Okay, but really, who TF is Dave Dave?"
That ultimately is what this has boiled down to.
I know this is turned into a viral marketing video for Dave Dave if he just
Dave
chops
Dave's
these
got
all up.
some
Stunt.
loyal followers. Where are these people for me? Like, I hope we got some people in other debates talking about Elijah. What the heck?
Sure they are.
I need a little bit of
No
what
doubt.
Dave's having.
Yeah, Dave Dave's got some good
Whoa.
PR guys.
Ethan.
Oh, big boy. There
Oh,
you go, baby.
Jesus.
Thank you very much, sir.
Jesus, sugar daddy over here. Oh, damn.
I have never seen this man in the chat like that before, so it is showing up,
We are
showing out.
sipping on
Damn.
$100 donation.
Nathan's loyal. I've seen him around.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Nathan. Maybe you know what I do recall you sending maybe one or two chats on some like 6 or 7 debates ago that I was hosting. Okay, I think there's one more I get to, and then I get to the newest ones again. Let's see. Veils of the Continuum sends £5 and says, "Morality is necessary because without it, power rules and nothing can be called unjust."
That's not a
Yeah.
motivator. I mean, the question that you're asking is if it exists. The universe doesn't owe it to us to have morality exist. What you're saying is it would be unfortunate if it didn't exist, but that's not. It's not exactly what you're referring to there. But I mean, broadly, you're right.
Okay, Taylor. Do you think
Yeah,
that-
I guess just it's important to have some sort of objective morality that doesn't rely on just each individual preference, because then the stronger whole can just, the stronger group can just assert their preferences, whether or not you like them, and you really won't have a justification for saying that it's bad. You just can say you don't like it.
Okay. Nathan Cummings for 5 says, I think this guy will go pro-life. There's hope. He believes in you,
agree.
bro.
Every
I
day,
agree.
every day I get an inch closer.
Eli is so sane. He's so close. I said that to him on our last chat. I said you're so close.
Yeah, I get this a lot. It's because I'm in like a middling position, so I could get tugged either way. It just depends. I need Nathan in my chat, and then
Would
then
you?
we'll see.
Well, Eli, would you say if you are in that way of like you could be tugged?
Sorry,
that
you
would
broke
posit
up
to
there,
yourself
Taylor.
You broke up.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Okay. I was saying, Eli, if you're actually serious about being able to be pulled one way or the other, and you were sitting on some sort of fence, would you not posit some sort of like Pascal's wager to yourself of like what are the consequences of each worldview and which is worse?
Well, I would say I'm always amenable to new positions. That's what every content creator needs to say to their audience so that they have followers. But I do truly mean it. I mean, I used to be pro-life and now I'm pro-choice, so I do mean it. But like everyone says this, with Pascal's wager, you have to also account for probabilities as well. So what I would say is my current position is obviously that it is highly unlikely that pro-life is right. But I understand the position enough to talk about it, and the morality of it is it's important to address. I think it's very important to address pro-life.
Okay. Addressed. Mad though sends another 10 New Zealand dollars. "We understand taking the drug is wrong because we understand the baby is on the path of continuous development. They are on the same entity as their future sentient self."
That doesn't operate within the framework that I've posited, but obviously you disagree, so it's going to seem that way. But if you had them take the pill at 10 weeks and then killed them at 11 weeks, there would be no harm done. But obviously you disagree with this because the killing is harmful. So I feel like I'm making myself clear, but there must be some sort of misunderstanding or intuition that's happening. It wouldn't be harmful if you prevented the consequence from happening. Like if you gave them a pill to kill them and then you gave them a pill that corrects it before it killed them. It's like, was there a harm committed? And it's like, you did an immoral action by giving them the pill, but it's like nobody experienced a harm, so it's kind of different.
Well, I agree with this guy who sent the question, just in the sense that I think what the difference is between what you're saying, like an early abortion versus not just choosing not to have sex, is that you're interrupting kind of the continuity of the development. And that is, I think, where the harm lies. I think much like we would say, like you would agree that this is the same human organism from 5 weeks till whenever post birth. It's the same human organism, and you're disrupting that development process, much like if I had, this is a Trent Horn example, like if I had a Polaroid picture and it just hadn't developed yet, and it was a picture of something very rare or something, and you ripped it up, and because it just looked like a black blob, and you said, well, it wasn't a picture, it was just a black blob, and I said, no, it was the picture of it, it just needed time to develop, right? So it is the same being, it needs time to develop.
This is why I mentioned the lack of or at least in my perspective, a lack of a prescription that's being had here, because there's nothing wrong with interrupting a process. It's only when we value that process is it wrong. Like a root canal is a process, right, and we interrupt that process by getting it. But we deem that the purpose of that process is harmful. Therefore, it's okay to get a root canal. There's nothing wrong with harming a process.
Well, right. It's always going to be based on the fact that it's a human being.
That it's valued.
Not the process itself. It's just that we know for certain that that process will end in a developed, barring any accident, barring any death or something.
Well, sometimes it happens on accident, so it's not a
most right? Big, far, 99% that it will develop into an adult, a human adult.
Yeah. But obviously, like our different foundations are going to illuminate the differences between our opinions on this.
Yes.
All right. Dave's not here, man.
Get him.
That's funny.
In. I want to meet Dave so bad.
Next one was. Wait, where'd it go? How do we know Eli has a subjective experience? Oh, wait, did I read that one?
I don't think so.
Yeah, how do we know that?
I mean, if we want to do the solipsism debate, we can. I mean, I'm not. It's a very, very untenable position. Like, if we want to be hyper skeptical of specific things, like we want to be hyper skeptical that I have a conscious experience, but we're like, we're Daredevil with the blind stick whenever somebody just says that humans are valuable, and we're just like not skeptical of this at all, then it seems like we're weaponizing skepticism a little bit. So I know you're not skeptical of this, unless you're a solipsist, then like, I'm sorry, dude.
Don't apologize to me, bro.
That's true.
All right. Skater Boy 420 sends $2. He says, "Can you tell Jamal Dave says hi on this live?" But wait? Which one's Jamal? Or is it Jamal Dave? Is that one full name?
I hope.
Clarify. Taylor, you look like you know what we're talking about. What they're talking about.
I'm so intrigued. I'm just like, now we have a new name, we have new lore. Like,
do you know Jamal
Dave?
I don't. It just keeps getting more mysterious.
Okay. Well, speaking of mysterious, Nathan Cummins sends $5 again, and he says, "NP, I'd be Taylor Sugar. She's smoking. I think she has a man. Sad face."
Hey Nathan, I'm sure my cash app's somewhere in my links, so go ahead if you're feeling super generous.
Yeah, if you want to pass it around.
I assume that means
you gotta shave the mustache, bro, for Nathan.
No, I would.
I'm gonna take that as Nathan giving me the W for this debate. By the way,
That's true.
Offering his.
You would be You're officially a professional debater if someone pays you for your debate performance.
Life in HD replied to that saying, "There goes my hero." That's funny. Okay. Next we got Nathan for another 5. He says, "Look! Are you looking? Wait! Listen! Are you listening? Okay, I'm lost."
Oh, Nathan. Okay.
I think he's impersonating one of you. I don't know. Okay. I think that's what he's saying. I don't know. I think he's
Any
trying to
one of
be
us.
sarcastic about it. But I appreciate the support, Nathan. Mad though for another New Zealand 5. Prescription is inherent human value. Arguments should be made for exceptions.
Yeah, this isn't. The argument is that this is an exception.
Orthodox. Orthodox Phronesis said Nathan needs to be sent to prison. Oh, man. That's funny. Lock him up. Okay, I think I might have missed just one here. Let me double check. Otherwise, we might have just got through all the supers, luckily. Because that was getting heated. I was afraid Nathan was going to take over the stream. Not a problem. I was just afraid. Let's see. I didn't want you guys to be here all night. I respect your time. We went over the Q&A time a little bit, but I think we had that time because you guys got through your openings pretty quick. So we had like an extra. Okay, we got another 5 from Nathan. I'm running for governor for Texas next time around 2029, then president. I'm going to fix the USA. It's going to be nothing you have seen before.
You have my vote, Nathan.
All right, no,
Unironically, Nathan, I'll have you on my show.
He's not
if you
done, he
actually
says.
run.
He says he's not done, so I'm just gonna get comfortable here for a moment.
I'm one state above you, so if you run for Texas governor, you come up and we'll chat. I'll have you on my show. We'll do it. We'll run it.
You guys want to shout out your channels and shows while we're at the end of the Q&A?
Sure. I'm just at Taylor is online 0 on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah, I'm at Spotlight with Elijah Moore on YouTube. I do like full length podcast stuff. That's where Taylor and I debated for the first time on there. And then I have a TikTok where I do mostly abortion stuff, which is like spotlight_Elijah.Moore or something like that. So thinking about changing that stuff soon. But yeah.
All right, guys, go listen to him perform abortions on a podcast.
It's all
Sounds
audio.
good. Just kidding. Nathan is getting a lot of responses right now to that last one. I will see if I could do a poll. You guys just hang tight. I got some new permissions, but it's not the exact permissions that I thought it would be. Let's see. Let me know if you guys hear this real quick. Can you hear that?
Mm-mm. Was it someone commenting a fart noise?
You don't hear that?
Are you asking us or like the live?
If you have the live pulled up on anything, let me know.
I do, but I have it muted, so I can't hear.
Okay.
Yeah. Hang on. Do you want?
Yeah, mute yourself and then listen for a second. Let me know if you hear the background.
Okay, hang on.
You don't hear that?
Are you asking us or like the? I don't think so.
Okay.
I didn't hear anything.
It might just be a little bit out of sync. Let me see if I can do this poll, guys. 1 second. No, I can't do the poll. All right. Well, forget the poll. Nathan just sent another $100. He says, I'm going to be the strongest forces you have never seen. I have no friends, no fam, no friends. I've been biding my time for years, getting ready.
Wow.
I believe in you, man. Do you have my support?
This is a great way to launch your campaign, brother.
Nathan and Dave 2028.
It's not obscure at all to do it on a debate. podcast
Mhm.
Not weird. Very
YouTube
normal.
channel.
Happens all the time.
I think more people should, personally. It's the, modern way. He's using his mom's credit card. That's funny.
Getting some Robux or something.
Life in HD. That was great. Resident chat comedian over here. Let's see what we got on. Well, now I'm glad we had the extra time.
Yes, seriously.
Bro's gonna call his credit card company sober tomorrow and attempt to charge back. No, I believe this man has integrity. He's running for president.
That's true.
That's true.
He would never. Matt, though, donates $2. Nathan takes donations from APAC.
It's just
gotta
funneling
send the-
straight to you guys.
You guys got to send a longer, or Mad, you got to send a longer one so I can practice my New Zealand accent more. I want to get really good
It's
at
pretty
it.
good, honestly.
Well, I have New Zealand friends, and hung out with one of them pretty often when I lived in Austin 6 months ago. Local Machine says Taylor wins another one, folks. If only that person was the poll, then I could officially give you a
That was
W.
the poll.
But
I think that was the poll.
I
Let's
guess
do
so.
it.
local Machine is he's just a loyal chatter.
Mm-hmm.
If I shave my
Um,
mustache, do I win?
We could put that in the poll.
Yeah, should Elijah shave the
There's
mustache?
several options. It'll be who was most persuasive,
Whose
Taylor.
mustache is best?
Bills of. I can't see your full name, bro. Let me see. I want to give you the full shout out you deserve. Veils of the Continuum sends £2 and doesn't say anything. Thank you. Nathan Cummings, another $10, says, I'll never take money. I want no one ever to think I'm doing it for the money. Will you guys? We'll see. I'm almost ready. Man, I feel
Wasn't
drunk
he the
reading
one
that.
who said that like you need to pursue money, or is this a
Yeah,
different
no,
guy?
he's already
That's
got
true.
the money,
That's
clearly.
true. That's true. Yeah, he doesn't
Now
need
it's
to pursue
time
it.
for the
He's got it.
power.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
That's why he's saying he's not taking APAC money.
Yes, that's true. He's got integrity.
Integrity. Nathan charges interest for every vote. That's funny. Is it okay? No, that's not a question for me. Okay. Oh man, every time I click, it automatically hovers over the block button. I'm trying not to abuse the power. Yes, Stacy Flores, I agree. Thanks for his generous support to MDD. He is amazing. Amazing. I'll say it like James. And then Stacy, thank you very much. Why use your voice to speak against those innocent ones that have no voice? I believe that's at you, Elijah.
I would challenge the word innocent. I don't even know what that means in this
So
conversation.
you think unborn? You would say fetus. She would say babies are not innocent.
Yeah, I don't think they have the capacity to be innocent. Or if they're innocent, they're just as guilty as they are innocent. It's like inaction, the inability to be either. Probably like neutral.
Taylor, opinion.
Yeah, I just reject it. I mean, because I think things can be innocent. Like, I think dogs can be innocent or not innocent, like just in a different kind of level. So I think that we ascribe innocence and guilty to things. Like children can be innocent or guilty in a sort of different level. Would you say that past 20 weeks they're guilty or innocent? Would you give them?
I'd probably say they're innocent. Yeah.
They're innocent. Okay.
Yeah.
Then it's just going to ultimately come down to the like.
Yeah.
It's just not a person. Like it's not. I think just to Elijah in general, it's just nothing. It's just. What did you say it
Morally
was?
speaking, it's
Just,
something.
It's something, but it's
a
nothing
human.
of worth. It's a human. Just
Yeah.
Local
And
machine.
I don't
thank
like
you.
using values or worth. Like I'm really trying to stay on
mhm.
the harms and stuff. The morality of it. I think these are proxies,
Alright.
but they're different. I think.
That's good. That's good. We got that cleared up there. One other thing I'd like to clear up is that Nathan Cummings sent another $5, and he says, "I worked for my money." So
We didn't doubt that, Nathan. We
the
believe you.
chat is
that
right
was
now,
the whole
I guess.
goal. was
Yeah.
money, and he got it. You know.
Yeah,
So.
the chat's doubting the integrity of my man Nathan here.
Nah.
Local machine, thank you very much. He said that I proved that I was a moderator, real moderator, during the Captain and Jay Dyer debate the other day.
I need to
That
watch
was
this.
That was
a
good.
really
That was
fun
fun.
one.
That
I
was
got
fun.
mad anxiety in the middle because someone Jay shared his screen, and when I had to readjust it, someone said that I doxed myself. Like
Ah.
in the
That's
chat,
good.
I kept seeing that. I was like, "What are they talking about?" Oh no, I did my taxes today. Maybe I left that up on the screen, and then I did have that up on the screen, but it just wasn't on the screen that got shown. It just said
Oh,
James's name. So
just dox James. That's
yeah,
fine.
but everybody knows who James is. Dr. James Coons. It's gonna be amazing. Yeah, that's something that he would say about getting your tickets to DebateCon because it is. It's going to be the best one yet. I've been to the last several, and I just got to tell everybody, this one's going to be fun. There's a lot of good prompts, a lot of good debates, and then we do have people that are trying to go for their W when they might not have had one before, so that I feel like they're extra focused on it, and that's going to create some fun energy. Right. Acting brand new. I'm gonna just read a couple of these for you guys for we'll close it. Acting brand new 86 says Elijah didn't come prepared to defend his arguments objectively, just creates definitions of harm.
True.
So I think if you had different definitions of harm, is that what they're saying, or just a more definitive framework of what harm is? Maybe that would have
Well,
been
there's
stronger.
multiple frameworks for harm, right? You have like the I can't remember what they're called. There's like three like main types of harm. One of which is the one that I'm positing. Then there's like the counterfactual type of harm when you have two comparative worlds, and then you have like a teleological account of harm, which is that something has a purpose and harm is doing this. So I hope I don't come off as unprepared. I felt like we were kind of rattling it out the whole time. So
I didn't think
yeah.
so. I just wanted to let you address that.
Yeah,
Maybe,
there are other types of harm. One of mine, the one I'm positing, is a very common type of harm. So I wouldn't say that it's like I'm making something up or that it's subjective. They claim it's objective, but
Nathan Cummings sends another $5 and he says APAC is evil. It's the small hat people, and I'm going to stop them. This
Oh
man
my
has a plan, I guess.
goodness.
Um, Heaven met this was a Wilson argument. She's too soft. She conceded everything. Okay, so this is a criticism for you, Taylor. This was a Heaven Max says this was a Wilson argument. She's too soft. She conceded everything for no reason. Why zero pushback?
I don't think I conceded. I think just sometimes you get stuck in circles where we're just going to be repeating ourselves. So I think sometimes I just let the audience decide for themselves if my opponent's arguments are convincing. So yeah, I'm definitely not aggressive, but I just think it makes for a better debate to just let the audience decide which arguments are more convincing.
yeah, and you're probably being dishonest if you don't concede like at least a few things in a debate, because then the
Or
entire
at
premise
least
is that
concede that is your position and that is what the
yeah,
audience can see,
and
not
that
I
it's
agree with you.
and that
Yeah.
it's consistent within your own framework, but your framework is wrong, but you're
Right.
something like that. So if you're not making
Sure.
concessions like this, then it's very unlikely that you're having a good faith debate. I think.
Yeah, no, I think you guys were good faith in general. I didn't feel like anyone was doing any gotchas or anything like that and interrupting in a way that was unmanageable. Okay, let's see. We can go ahead and call it if you guys are ready to get off. I appreciate y'all's time. I'm gonna hang out here for maybe another 5-10 minutes with the chat. If any of you want to stay, you're welcome to, or we can say goodbye.
I'll probably get going. This was great though. Thank you so much, Taylor, and thank you so much for having me on. Like I said, I'm a big fan of the show, so this is very surreal to be on Modern Day Debates. So thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for the conversation, Taylor. I will
Yeah.
message you with thoughts whenever I have them.
Yes, please do. All right. Thanks, Eli. And
Yep,
yeah, I'm
see
going to
ya.
hop off. I'm sleepy, but I'll talk to you guys later.
See ya.
Thanks
All
for
right,
having
you
me.
guys take it easy.
All right. Bye.